Hey guys, this is Socrates from the Singularity One-on-One, and you're watching The Baboon Room. Woo!
That was pretty awesome.
That just happened. Hello.
Hey Corey.
How you doing?
Great, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing frickin' fantastic.
On it, and it keeps breaking, so I keep trying, and I've tried everything that's supposed to work with Skype, and nothing really works the way it's supposed to. So I actually ranted about this to one of the Skype founders in an episode of mine called, the guy's called Jan Tallinn,
Yeah.
and he was one of the 4 or 5 guys that started Skype, and
Right.
basically I think walked away with a few $100 million in the end. But anyway, I ranted to him about how it's gotten worse, it's not gotten better, but we're still where we are. I mean,
Right.
I don't see what's their problem of putting a button to say record, because they already captured the audio and the video.
Right. Yeah. That's
So
that's
why do you have to have a third-party software to plug in on top of it, which they keep breaking for some reason?
right. In that episode, didn't he
beyond
say
me.
that he just like he got paid and kind of walked away? Like
Yeah.
he's like, not my chair, not my problem.
Yeah, let me just turn this off.
All right.
Yeah, and speaking to, who was your buddy there, the producer with the radio face?
Greg.
Greg.
Yes.
Well, at least you're not being told that you sound and look like a Bond villain, my friend.
This is true.
Which is, I've been told a number of times.
I think that juxtaposition is really fun because you're way too nice to be a Bond villain, but
He doesn't even know I
you
have
do
a
kind of
Sean
look and
Connery.
sound like a Bond villain. I mean that's a thing.
I have a Sean Connery.
You have a Sean Connery? Oh no.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Socrates.
Ay.
Trust me, I'm not that nice as I'm coming through on my interviews. I'm actually, Socrates was not very much liked and very unpopular, as he put it. So, and I'm not even trying to copy him. I'm just like saying it's the reality of how things are. I'm a work in progress.
I think all of the best examples that I can think of are in fact just works in progress. What I mean we're already basically going now. It's almost like we're on the Nerdist and they just start the second the people get in the room. So if we maybe just rewind and we'll just gun it from the top because I want to give people a little snippet about what I know about Nikola Danilov. I guess before we start, I've heard 2 different pronunciations of your last name. What is a good one?
Danilov is the proper one.
Okay. Danilov?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not bad. Danilov.
Danilov.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
And you can call me Nick just for simplicity, or Socrates if you prefer. It's up to you. Nicola is kind of a little long, and I mean, in North America, we all shorten names, right?
This is true. This is true. Yeah, I'm going to call you Socrates because that's more fun.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're putting it out there, and I 100% dig it. Welcome to the Baboon Room, everybody. I have been teasing this interview as the biggest interview that we've ever done because it is the biggest interview that we've ever done. Full stop. I don't have a lot of podcast heroes. I would say maybe 5. You know, I keep talking about Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan. And you laugh, Mr. Socrates, but this is entirely true. I've been listening to Singularity 101 since after watching Ray Kurzweil's TED Talk about the singularity, the technological singularity for the 18th millionth time. I'm like, there's got to be a podcast about this. And it's called Singularity 101. And Socrates, who you're listening to right now and or looking because we're making some video of this, has interviewed everybody around the singularity period. Like freaking everybody. Like we made the little video. He's interviewed, of course, Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis, most of the sci-fi writers that I like that are still alive. Another couple little tidbits. 40% of his listeners have PhDs, which makes me feel super smart because I'm just a guitar player. I'm a huge fan. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I hang out with all the smart people. That's good stuff. Anyway, I lost all my volume. Oh, that's because I stopped talking loud. There you go.
Wait, no, I did too.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, that's because my mic is off. Boy, aren't we professional?
Yeah, we know what we're
We
doing.
need podcast idols.
Exactly. You need heroes. Examples are
Guitar
good.
players are not known for their voice anyway.
This is true. Except that I sing as well, so that's kind of a problem. So yeah, I mean you've interviewed all of these people. Your podcast last time, and I was listening to I think an episode from a while ago, has over 500,000, like 500,000 downloads. What's the number now?
Which one? The most popular one that I've done so far is the one with Noam Chomsky, and that one is around 500,000 downloads.
Oh, just that one.
Just
What
that.
do you think? What do you think your all-time total is?
Oh, it's a little over 4 million.
Oh, well, that's whatever. 4 million. That's cool.
No,
That's-
you know,
It's
honestly,
huge.
my friend, that's not very much. If you actually look at the time that I've done this for,
Yeah.
which is about 6 years, and you divide it, by week and by day and so on, you would actually discover that most people would have probably done better job in terms of traffic than I have.
I mean,
4 million is not so much for about six years.
okay, I will take that because you're the one with podcasting experience that far outstrips mine. It still feels like a big deal. Let's put it that way. To
Tim
me,
Ferriss has 80 million or so, and he's been only podcasting maybe for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, something
right.
like that.
At the same time, though, the only relevant comparison that you can make is with one of the top podcasters on the planet ever. So that's I mean that's a thing. So all that said, I basically wanted to set the stage a little bit because you usually ask people at the beginning of your podcast to describe for themselves what they do to new people. I kind of want to go a little bit deeper. If you could explain, I mean, obviously people know that you're a podcaster. They know that you're a philosopher and you think a lot around these topics. Just in describing what you do around the singularity in podcasting, if we could maybe get a sense of what your ultimate goal is as well, I think that would be really helpful for my listeners.
Well, ultimately, my goal is to kind of wake up the sleeping populace. I mean, Socrates was a gadfly. Gadflies are not pleasant. They sting, and they're quite annoying. So the ultimate goal is to, if I have done my job right, I would first set the environment, which back in the day of Socrates, the real one, it was called a symposium. And symposium was basically a drinking party where people would get together, play some music, have some alcohol, have some fun, and in the meantime, discuss very important topics and issues such as ethics, politics, law, religion, beauty, love, friendship, etc.
Right.
And so at the end of the night, the idea was that the participants of the symposium walked away with a new kind or level of understanding of the topic. And so if I've done my job right, at best, I would have been a midwife, because my job is not to tell people what to think, is not to teach them anything, but simply to set the environment in which they would give birth to their own ideas. And this is what, of course, Socrates did so well back in the day with all his followers, because he refused that he ever taught anyone anything except for once, and that was about love. But anyway, that's what he said. And all his students went in all kinds of mutually kind of inconsistent and often mutually exclusive directions to find all kind of philosophical schools and argue about what the real Socrates was all about. But yet he was the father figure of them all.
Right.
So that's the ultimate goal. And now that ultimate goal taken from the ancient time into our modern time in the context of those technologies, such as artificial intelligence, most notably,
Right.
which will challenge the very meaning of what it is to be human. I mean, first of all, for the last 2,500 years since the time of Socrates, we haven't really come to some kind of a conclusive or mutually accepted, commonly accepted definition of what it means to be human to begin with. And I would say that now this is going to be even more of a problem, because the shift that's happening currently in technology is not really a shift in technology. It's rather a shift in humanity.
How do, how do you mean? How do you mean?
I mean, everything that you consider to be you will be challenged because it will be flexible. So,
Right.
for example, if you wake up in the morning, so let's say I wake up this morning, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I look at myself in the mirror and I see, oh, there's this bald guy that kind of looks like a Bond villain and who is about 40 years old, white, about 6'1", about 185 pounds. And that's kind of like what I identify as me, as my identity,
Right.
and as kind of the features which supposedly make me human, more or less. Now, imagine the context in which, with the help of things such as synthetic biology, artificial intelligence, genetics, robotics, nanotech, and all of that, you can change your sex, your age, your race, your looks, how many hands and legs, or your total biology.
Right.
Everything will become flexible. Then the question becomes, who is the real you? If everything that we know of as certain, as permanent, as inchangeable, as eternal is about to change and become flexible,
Right.
then what is the real you? What is the real essence? And that's not only in the personal level as who is the real Socrates or who is the real anyone, but what does it mean to be human, one level up at the collective level?
Right.
And how is that going to impact on what we currently understand to be our law, our politics, our ethics, our art, our science, our literature, everything that's kind of consisting of the major accomplishments of our civilization, the human civilization. So all of that will be challenged tremendously. And in that process, I think we would either ultimately go extinct because there's the possibility that and it, I mean, the reason for that can be multidimensional, or it come from a number of places. So the idea is that the Fermi paradox, which is the basically the observation that in a universe with almost gazillions of other galaxies and billions of other stars, and we have billions of exoplanets possibly that are located in the Goldilocks area,
Right.
such as planet Earth, which means it's not too hot and it's not too cold, and there's probably organic elements on those planets. And then, therefore, there should be, the cosmos should be teeming with life.
Right.
But the simple observation is then, if that's true, then where are all the aliens?
I honestly, this was among my list of questions. I wanted to ask if you thought the coming of, I mean, if the coming of artificial superintelligence, for example, is an natural end result of the law of accelerating returns, then that might actually be a plausible suggestion for where the heck is everybody. Like all the civilizations that should exist out there, maybe they either crunch into a situation that they can't go past, or they are all around us in microcosmic, data functioning quantum particles or something.
Well, so one of the ideas, let me just finish that thought and then I'll address the question a little more specifically. So the idea is that basically in that period of time, probably civilizations actually go extinct for one reason or another.
Right.
Right before the singularity, the pre-singularity event, and that can come in the form of nuclear obliteration, that can come in the form of some kind of a conflict with artificial intelligence, that can come in the form of some kind of ecological disaster, that can come in the form of,
Grey goo.
super volcano, gray goo, meteorite explosion or impact, you name it. So, but the idea is that the result of all those possibilities is that probably most of the civilizations, or at least that's one of the hypotheses is out there, probably most of those civilizations out there don't actually make it through that pre-singularity filter.
Right.
And therefore, since we are in that period right now, we are in the make or break kind of a timeline in the 21st century. And either we are going to go extinct, like it seems must be happening, given the fact that all we can see and hear out there is silence and darkness.
Well, at least
Or
in radio spectrums, right?
right, and as far as we can see, as far as sort of
Right.
our current technologies allows us to peak,
Right.
right? And I mean, there's another theory that goes, well, maybe they're so smart and advanced more than us that they can actually kind of pull the curtain on top of our eyes and kind of play with us, so they can hide themselves pretty well and intentionally so.
I definitely want to get back to some basic terms, because while
Sure.
I am a raging nerd, not all of my fans are. So we're working now on like quantum telecommunication with entangled particles, right? It's not very good, but we can sort of plausibly see how it might be possible.
I think we already have some successful experiments, but
Right.
we're talking about photons, which are very tiny, minuscule particles, and we're talking for fractions of a fraction of a second.
Right. But by extension, that means that it's not physically impossible. Right?
Right.
So again,
Yes.
for an advanced civilization, not only could communication not be operating on the visible electromagnetic radiation spectrum, but it could be something we completely haven't thought of yet, right? So I try to stay open to stuff like that, because when we talk about advanced civilizations or super advanced artificial intelligence, I think that we very often get caught in the models that we've sort of created right now, right? So we're trying to extrapolate kind of in a linear fashion, or with what we have now, which is all we can really do. But I think that unknown is always sort of ever present, right?
The reality is that our knowledge will always be dwarfed by our ignorance.
I hope that's true, to be
And
honest, because that way there's always more questions to answer.
Of course, I think in an endless universe that must be kind of, or at least it's not a. I don't know if it's a provable concept, but I think it's a good axiom, and it's certainly true for us where we are at right now.
Right.
And it's something that's very, I think, useful to keep in mind, both in the collective level, but also in the personal level. So I don't care who you are and how smart you are. The reality is that your ignorance would always far surpass your knowledge.
It definitely feels that way most of the time. So to backtrack just a little bit, could you, like, I want to find out where you first found out about the technological singularity, and if you could describe for us in really basic terms just what the holy crap that is.
So, okay. So I was a student doing a political science degree at York University here in Toronto, and my specialty was armed conflict.
Oh wow.
Very depressing topic, very kind of taxing on
The
one, I
soul.
think.
Right.
You can only see so many documentaries, I think, and read so many in-depth descriptions about war since the beginning of the world without, I mean, at least for me, it was kind of very taxing psychologically. At any rate, I was looking for a topic to write my thesis on, and I didn't want to write about something, like World War I or World War II, because
Right.
there are forests in the Amazon that probably disappeared on papers that were written and no one's ever read or referred to afterwards.
Right.
So that was about 2005, 2006. And the topic I stumbled on was the emerging at the time drone warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
And we're talking very early on, 2005, 2006. There was only one country in the world, the United States, that was fielding drones. And the US had only maybe a dozen or two, not very well functioning, and at the time it was mostly the CIA that had control over them. So the Reaper and the Predator were the first couple ones. Anyway, so in the process of doing research for that paper, I stumbled on two books that basically blew my mind. And I kind of happened to read them one after the other, which was another also kind of very fortunate event I had no control over. But the first book was a book by Ray Kurzweil called The Singularity is Near. And the second book is a work of science fiction by Charlie Stross called Accelerando. And Accelerando is basically the singularity in sci-fi.
Okay.
So if Ray Kurzweil did the non-fiction book of about the singularity, then Charlie Stross, about the same time, wrote the fiction book of how a singularity would look like, or feel like, or sound like.
Right.
So those two books together blew my mind. And so my thesis ended up being that basically the conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan may be not, as Samuel Huntington has proposed, the clash of two civilizations, but rather the first time in history where increasingly automated machines will be taking increasingly automated decisions as per whether a human being would live or die.
Right.
And for me, that was the radically new thing about those conflicts. Not the fact that, someone was invading Afghanistan or Iraq and then someone else was resisting and people were dying on both sides. That has happened for thousands of years.
Right.
So basically, after I finished my master's degree, which, by the way, didn't go very well for a number of reasons. My supervisor took some convincing, first of all, to even accept my kind of topic as relevant in political science. Because we're talking 2005, 2006, and kind of robotics and drone warfare, and that stuff was not quite visible yet for most people. And we're talking people who are used to read the literature of the 1970s or early 80s, which is the peak of the Cold War, of course.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I got a B+ on my thesis, which is the lowest passing grade. And then I promptly graduated as an employed person and started sending out resumes. I sent out maybe 300 and I stopped counting. And of course, I graduated around 2008. So I started my master's in around 2006. I finished around 2008 or so, and it was like the peak of the recession.
Right.
So I sent 300 resumes. I think I had one interview. And, I had like good academic record, bunch of scholarships, blah, blah, blah. No one gave a damn. So, and in the end, I was sending resumes for car salesmen, for like anything, just to get a job, And I had one interview, and apparently it didn't go very well, so that was it. But however, one of the last ones I sent was to a blog called Singularity Hub.
Right.
Which is the first Singularity blog that I got aware of. And it had an open call for staff writers. So I thought, well, I'm kind of familiar with the topic of the singularity now, because basically for the last 2 years I've been doing research on it as part of my MA. Secondly, people say I'm a decent writer, so why don't I apply for that job?
Right.
And I did. But surprise, surprise, after waiting for a week and not after waiting for another week afterwards, suddenly I discovered that they also didn't care about what I've done and who I was. So, however hard that was for me to swallow, the thought suddenly came into my mind that perhaps maybe I just don't need them. And I thought, well, how hard it may be to become a blogger.
Right,
and
start doing it.
I have no idea, because I'm not a technical guy. I don't have an education in computer science. I don't know the first thing about HTML, web design, nothing.
Right.
But I thought, well, how hard it could be. I'm good at research, so let me just check it out and see how hard it could be. And it took me 3 months, I think, to put up my first web page. So I bought a domain called SingularitySymposium.com. It's actually still active. People can still go and check it out. It still looks as horrible as always, even though that's probably the fifth iteration that you would see now that I had done back in the day. And it's all HTML. So it took me 3 months to put the first web page on it. It took me another 3 months to maybe make another 50 pages on it. And one day after 6 months of this struggle, I discovered WordPress. And I was like, wow,
Right.
this is amazing. So I don't need to try and figure out HTML anymore. I can just start a blog on this thing called WordPress. And then you just type in here just like you type in a word processor, and boom, your stuff magically appears on the website. How cool is that? And it's easy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then
we're on WordPress too.
yeah, you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like, I think right now 22% of all websites in the world already run on WordPress.
Yeah, I heard a stat like that. That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's open source, so good for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 6 months later, I also discovered podcasting, just like I discovered WordPress. And I thought I had the same fears. I don't know anything about the technology. I don't know the first thing about audio. I don't know the first thing about microphones. Plus, not to mention, I have what people tell me is a Bond villain accent. How would they react to that kind of a voice? And would they just not prejudge me and say, oh, this guy's not worth listening to?
Right.
So I had a lot of fears and ignorance, but then I thought, well, it's worth trying. What can I lose? So I gave it a try, and there we are here with you today. So
Right.
6 years later, I have 200 episodes with some of the coolest people in the world. I've had 4 million downloads. I reach about 150,000 people a month currently, and
It's
I
a big
love
deal.
what I do.
It's a big, yeah. And I think being able to not only own what you do but love what you do. I mean, as a starting out as a musician, that's all I wanted out of life. I don't need to make a lot. I just get to decide what I'm doing today. It's a big deal. So when so with the Afghanistan war and the first use of drones, I mean, obviously it sounds like your thesis ended up being a little bit about probably, I mean, the ethics of AI, I know, is something that comes up a lot in your podcast, and I personally love that. And I know that it's conjecture because we might not see, artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence in our lifetime, but I think it's still an extremely relevant question to start that conversation now. But if we could we maybe define for my audience, how would you describe the technological singularity in, a definitive space?
I made one of the mistakes that many of my guests have made, which is I went to become very long-winded in the last couple of days. I don't know what's up with me, but
Hey man, you have a good story, and there's parts to your origin story that I'm actually going to bring up later. Not that I've done some research, but yeah, no,
Okay.
I think, and as an aside, just very selfishly, I don't think that we can separate you from all of the amazing stories that you tell, because you do. I mean, the number of people that you've interviewed that's a big deal. That's why I'm so fascinated to be able to have this conversation, because you have snippets of Noam Chomsky in your head, you have snippets of Ray Kurzweil in your head, like you've had those conversations. But I think for my audience and for the audience that I would like to have, being able to be introduced to you as a person and as like a freaking podcasting superhero with an origin story, to go as nerdy as humanly possible. I mean, you laugh, but I mean, to me, you totally are. And to everyone that I've introduced to the Singularity One-on-One podcast, they're like, "You're actually introducing that, or interviewing that guy?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I am." Like it's a real deal. So I think I be long-winded in that regard. We don't have anything better to do for sure. So if you could explain to like a layman what the technological singularity is and why it's important.
well, let me put it in the Socratic lingo by a single sentence question towards your audience, and you and all of us. And it is this: what happens to you when your toothbrush becomes smarter than you? So what happens when your toothbrush becomes smarter than you?
Right.
Because if you look around our world, everything is becoming smarter than us, right? Our cars are now smarter than the drivers that get in the car to drive them.
Right.
and are safer. The same about airplanes. Airplanes are not being driven or flown anymore by pilots. Pilots just take off in the first 2 minutes. Maybe they taxi around the runway a little bit. Then the AI takes
Oh,
over, and that's been going on, by the way, for decades now. And then in the end, they just land the plane. So the man in the plane is basically a backup for the machine. It's not the primary system, it's the backup system.
right.
So, and as you know, the phones are getting smarter, the clothes are getting smarter, the TV is getting smarter, the running shoes are getting smarter. Everything in our world is undergoing that process of smartification, or if that's a word. but
It's a word
but
now. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
but the idea is, so one day my toothbrush, has like 22 speeds, and it has like, I don't know, 18 programs for like shining, for cleaning, for
Right.
I don't know what. I don't even know what it is. But it has a microchip in it, and I have to recharge it. So one day that toothbrush eventually would have a smarter, more powerful microprocessor than this one right here.
Right.
So the question then is simply, what happens to us? What happens to me? What happens to you? And more importantly, not only as individuals, but what happens to us as a civilization? So in other words, the technological singularity is the moment when machine intelligence at first equals, and then most likely very quickly surpasses human intelligence.
Okay. So I think to create another level of basis for the rest of the conversation, because I definitely want to spend a lot of time talking about artificial intelligence. And there's so many other things that we could talk about. I mean, there's a lot. But I want to focus on that just so that I don't get too far off the rails, because I'm famous for that. So artificial narrow intelligence, how would you describe that and give us a really good example of it?
So artificial narrow intelligence is a calculator.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
We know that any calculator is smarter than most mathematicians are.
Right.
Unless you're, what was his name? Ramanujan, who is this kind of amazing Indian genius in like the 19 teens, who basically rediscovered on his own all of calculus and all kinds of crazy mathematics in India, and then got called to, I think, Cambridge or Oxford in England. I think it was Cambridge, and was this kind of pure mathematical genius. Any simple calculator device is smarter than any one of us at mathematics. That's
Right.
a perfect example of narrow AI. And the same is true of, for example, chess. Nowadays, any kind of computer can beat any kind of human, almost, and pretty much every human
Right.
now in chess. We saw recently that also happened with Go, even though this is where the line between perhaps narrow and artificial general intelligence start to become more grain and starts blurring. So narrow means a specific defined activity, whether it's calculations, whether it's playing chess, whether it's flying a plane, whether it's driving a car, something
Right.
like this.
Right.
Now, artificial general intelligence means that the same device or software can be used to do a diversity of not connected activities. So the same device can drive a car, can do your math, can give you tips on dating, maybe can tell you how to be a better podcaster, can tell your kids a lullaby for good night story, like and tell you a joke when you're
Right.
feeling sad, and all of those things.
So could we maybe, just for the sake of argument, it seems like the initial artificial intelligence in the movie Her would fall into that category, but only initially.
Well, of course, yeah. The movie Her was a kind of a hard takeoff, what is often referred to as hard takeoff scenario. So when it comes to the singularity, the idea is that there may be two possibilities. One is called a soft takeoff scenario, which
Right.
means that the moment that artificial intelligence equals human intelligence and then starts ramping up to become even faster and faster and faster, many times smarter than human intelligence. And so that process will take years, many years, a long time. That's called a soft takeoff.
Okay.
And in other words, it would give us a much longer period of adaptation as humanity and as a species to adapt to and hopefully peacefully coexist alongside the AIs. Now, in the movie Her, we have something very different, which was the hard takeoff scenario, which means that you have a very narrow AI, which becomes artificial general intelligence and then becomes artificial super intelligence in a very short period of time. And that period of time can be days or minutes, depending on how hard the hard case scenario is.
Right. Yeah. That's. I mean, I think this is where a lot of the people that are concerned about the security concerns.
Right.
Yeah. We were talking about what was his name? Roman something or other. I totally.
Roman Yampolsky.
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 Yep. I literally repeated the last name Yampolsky like 10 times 10 minutes ago, and of course it's like. I love that guy. He's awesome. I mean, I love the fact that he's an engineer who's basically just going out and trying to solve the problem, but he's still concerned about the security. I loved his little bit about the only actual intelligent machine that he's ever, or intelligent thing that he's ever created was his kids. That's pretty cute. So he talks about, and I think Elon Musk sort of alludes to this with his now ridiculously famous comment that I'm not going to repeat. That with that hard takeoff, you could have that super intelligent AI that is extremely intelligent and multifaceted, but at the same time not lacking in common sense, basically, right? Like curing cancer by killing everybody.
Right. So sometimes I think this is referred to as the paperclip problem.
Right, right. Could you maybe describe that for my audience?
Yeah, the paperclip problem is basically imagine that you design a computer to produce paper clips for you.
Right.
And you give it as much intelligence and a task, a very clear and simple task to produce the best and as many paper clips as possible. And one kind of unforeseen circumstance or effect of that may be that the computer can conclude that in order to fulfill its task, it has to have access to as many resources as possible.
Right.
And in order to do that, it simply has to take over the world. And anything in the way of it accomplishing its task or its programming goal is an impediment that needs to be eliminated, including people or anything else. And this process will probably continue until basically the whole planet is is covered in paper clips.
Or the universe, for that matter, right?
Or the universe, right. So, yeah, and that's the so-called paperclip problem. And this scenario or potential scenario is why, for example, people like Willem Hertling, who is a fantastic science fiction writer, who said in one of my interviews that the biggest danger lies not in the moment when artificial intelligence is artificial superintelligence, but it's the moment before that when artificial intelligence is not too smart.
Right, right.
That's when it's the most dangerous because it would kill indiscriminately.
That's where Yampolsky talks about the containment problem, as far as keeping even a child level AGI or like something that could become artificial superintelligence, basically in a walled garden, in like the mother of all boxes.
Sandboxing it or
Right.
creating something which people have called the Oracle AI, which means basically you sandbox it behind as many layers of firewalls, both hardware and software as possible.
Right.
And you exclude or preclude any contact between the AI and the external world. And then you just ask it questions. And hopefully, very simple questions that have a simple answer, which is always yes or no. So it can only spit out a binary response, either a 0 or a 1. And let's say a 0 would be a no and a 1 would be a yes.
Right.
And this way, it would hopefully not be able to supposedly manipulate you. And it would be hopefully useful for you to do whatever you need to do.
Wouldn't you have to give it? I mean, you're only ever. I mean, it's one thing if you're functionally capable of manipulating data. But without data, it's irrelevant. You can't ask a super intelligent AI a question out of context, or it'll give you a nonsense answer every time, right?
Right. So that's a fantastic point there, um, that people have not quite worked out yet. But the
Right.
idea is basically you sandbox the data together with the AI.
Okay.
Right. So let's say before you create the actual AI, you create the actual sandbox first. So you need a safe environment in which you are to give birth to that, right? Because once you've created it, you can't already sandbox it. It's
Right.
smarter than you. So
Right.
once it's out there, so in other words, first you got to build its kind of prison where you contain it. And in there you put Wikipedia and whatever else other
Right.
data you need. And then you create the AI and you contain it, and then you just ask it binary questions, or just to give you binary answers with a 0 or a 1 bit. That's it, because the fear is that if it spits more than 1 bit, it will be able to manipulate you.
I
And
think
hopefully, and that's what that scenario people have referred to as the Oracle AI.
right. I definitely like that. I definitely like that idea. I
You
I
like the idea of imprisoning another
well, we'll get into the
conscious
ethics in a minute.
intelligent
But
being?
as far as like Yampolsky would talk about that he's team people all the way. I mean, I'm kind of team people. We won't know that, if it's an Oracle AI, I still feel like it's narrow in the sense that it might be able to answer very very complex questions, but you know if we're just asking it yes or no questions, it's not like it can pass a high order Turing test. So we're maybe pushing down the road the point where we would have to sort of accrue any kind of sentience rights to it, or what have you. But maybe we should just jump into that right now. Like, at what point would you say an AI that can only answer yes or no questions, which I think itself, if I can answer yes or no questions, I could still eventually manipulate you. Again, if I was a super intelligent AI.
Possibly, but the question was a little bit different. Is about imprisoning intelligence and other conscious human, well, not human, but other
Right.
beings. So let's say I imprison you, and you're not allowed to answer me by anything else other than yes or no. Does that make it right or justified? Does that make it that you don't have intelligence and don't have consciousness
Right.
per
No,
se? It only means that
yeah.
I cannot judge it,
Right. Right.
right? Or I cannot see it, but that only helps me avoid the problem. It doesn't remove it.
Right.
It
Right.
kind
Right.
of sweeps it under the carpet.
So at what point? So I guess as we're rolling this thing out, and like I guess it's kind of a lot of game theory, but this shit is fascinating. There's no way around it. I mean, at what point does an AGI or an ASI uh, deserve to have that attention? Like, at what literal point should ethical or moral beings be concerned about that?
Well, first of all, in principle, I think we should be concerned about this now, right? So I think we should be concerned about the issue before we have to confront the issue.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think having
So,
discussions like this is maybe part of that, right?
exactly right. Yes. So, and perhaps we should start considering going beyond human rights, but going towards intelligence rights, perhaps.
Okay.
And we should go beyond not only racism, but also speciesism. So we've always thought that we are at the pinnacle of evolution, and God put everything on this planet for our own good and for our own usage. Well, there's another idea, which is to say that we are just a step in evolution. We're not pinnacle of anything. And in fact, if you look around us, we are not any more evolved than the bacteria or the viruses or even rats, for example, or cockroaches. Uh, and in fact, all of those organisms have evolved together with us, and in some ways have better adapted to their environment than we have. And continue evolving at a much faster pace than we have. For example, when it comes to bacteria resisting antibiotics, for example, right?
Right. I mean, they
Uh,
can basically their capacity to evolve over generations is a gazillion times quicker than ours is, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Until we upload, of course.
Maybe
Sorry.
there's that possibility. Absolutely,
Right.
yeah. But it's very far off remote right now, in my view.
Okay.
So going back to the issue of speciesism, so the fact that my intelligence and your intelligence, our human intelligence, is implemented on biological stratum, and the other intelligences may be implemented on silicon or some other stratum, is irrelevant to the question as far as intelligence is concerned, and therefore should
I
be
agree.
treated on an equal basis.
Yep.
And let me even broaden this and make it a little bit more challenging for your audience, perhaps. Imagine how we treat the next or the second most intelligent species on our planet today, right? The great apes,
Yeah.
or even most species of dolphins and whales.
Right.
And watch the cove, or go in any farm, industrial farming
Right.
business, and see what happens. First of all, the great apes are mostly near extinction. Their habitat is also equally threatened. So, to be honest, if the higher intelligences, if the AIs treat us the way we have treated our world and the second smartest intelligences and down the line after us,
Right.
then we're not going to be in good shape.
So-
We may be near extinction if we're treated the way we treat them.
Right.
So one argument for us treating them better is that so that we have a good precedent rather than the current bad one of how we should be treated when we stop being the smartest species on the planet.
Right.
Because the idea is, of course, the golden principle: treat others the way you want to be treated. So if we want to be treated well by smarter intelligences, then we should treat lesser intelligences also well. And right now, our intelligence is used as a justification to basically mercilessly kill, consume, exterminate anything else that doesn't kind of fit within our goals and ideas.
Right. So you're saying that it would be a more intelligent situation to be much more conscious about the entities that are of less intelligence than us, right?
Absolutely. And so,
Okay.
for example,
So okay.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
a super intelligent computer should already know that.
Well, it depends, right?
Right. I agree.
So a super intelligent computer will know that that's a possibility.
Okay.
But the question is, would it choose it as the best path of action?
Okay. So this is something I wanted to dig into because I think it might be useful. So everybody's worried about encoding. You have the three laws of robotics. I know you and Roman talked about that, and his reaction to it is something I want to come back to. But we have this attempt to sort of encode for morality or ethics or proper behavior, whatever you want to call it. And then you have the situation where the way I imagine artificial superintelligence is that, if it gets out and, whatever, assuming that it's just out and it's got its own sort of agency, it can read every ethical conversation we've ever had. It can watch all of this stuff, and hypothetically, it could do it in the space of time that it takes me to say this sentence. So it's going to be able to hold every piece of ethical and moral data that has ever existed in all of humanity. But on top of that, it could create an app. So, and again, I'm totally spitballing here. It could create an app and poll every single person on the planet. Because what you guys talked about, I think, is really important, is that there's no consensus on ethics, right? I mean, every different kind of religion or cultural bias or what have you. But it could ask everybody, easily, right? Everybody who's connected to a phone or anywhere near a phone, it could ask them all. Then it could crunch big data the way some of these learning algorithms are crunching big data, and basically come up with 2 or 3 of the best possible responses to any given situation. Then it could poll everybody again, right? And be like a third-party arbiter that I think sort of feeds in with how I envision like an Oracle agency, but like a more evolved version of that.
But why would it do that? Do you take a poll of the chickens in the chicken farm before you slaughter them?
If we could talk to great apes and we were as intelligent as we would both, you and I, like to be, for sure, right? Wouldn't we? We would. And
I'm not sure that we would, to be honest.
you and I,
We know that dolphins speak to each other. We know that
no, no,
they
no.
have a
I'm
language.
saying you and I specifically, right?
Right. Okay. But
And again, I'm extrapolating for a lot of dumb people out there, and I get that. Like, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that don't care. I guess, and my bias lends towards probably really, really obscene optimism. To be fair, just put that out there as something that, I'm working on. But yeah, so I always look at it like this. I mean, we can always look at humanity as being the problematic piece of shit species that it is, because I mean, we're doing a lot of really crappy things as this giant, uncontrolled sort of, species all over the planet, acting like a drunk virus. But there are elements among that, some thinkers like yourself and a bunch of other really, really cool people whose voices are getting louder, who are getting amplified by, podcasts like yours, right? As far as like going back to the main vision that I think is absolutely critical. I sort of see them as a more intellectually evolved part of our species. And those are the people talking constantly about how do we code an AI for ethics. Like the drunk at the bar, or like the truck driver who doesn't give a crap. Like, these people aren't paying attention to this equation whatsoever, right? So I'm hoping, I guess, that, situations like, OpenAI that I want to ask you about. And I mean, all the other people that are holding these symposiums now about the 3 laws of robotics and what might be added or taken away. I'm kind of hoping that is what we project forward to the next level of intellect.
here's the problem with that, right? I think you can project ethics as much and program it into an artificial superintelligence as much as you can do so in your own kids, which is to say, zero.
Hold on.
The only thing you can do is you can set an example. You cannot ever program your kid to do what you want it to do,
Right.
what she or he would do to please her parents, right? But what you can do is you can set a good example for them to follow, because I think one of the things about kids, and by the way, machine learning and all of that is basically learning by example too.
True. Yep.
And I think it's a simplistic way of putting it, but more or less
I think it's useful.
That's the core.
Right.
And so the idea that I'm trying to push forward here is that we cannot program this, but we can live it and show it by example, and then we can kind of hope for the best. And there's no guarantees. Just like when you have children, you can do the best that you can to take them to the best schools, to give them the best upbringing, to expose them to the best ideas, to provide the best education, the best nutrition, and everything for them. But there's never a guarantee how they will turn out in life.
Right.
So the best you can do is, I think, is if you live your lessons yourself, because kids see what people do and not what people say so much. And the same, that's why, for example, if you want a little neat psychological trick, is if you want to know the nature of somebody that you don't know, just watch how their very young kids and or their dogs act around them. Because very young kids, they don't have the time to have the filter yet.
Right.
And the same with dogs. Dogs don't have a filter, they never lie. So their emotional predisposition to their owner or to their parents, respectively, in each case, says a lot about how they're being treated without them saying how they're being treated.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can learn a lot about whether somebody is overpowering, whether they're domineering, whether they're mistreating them secretly or something like that.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to say is that, and the same is true. Nowadays, advanced AI is not programmed necessarily.
Okay, could we dig into that? Because that was going to be my next question.
Exactly.
I mean, I philosophically, I love that idea, and I think as far as if we leave our collective audiences with nothing other than to live by a proper example, which forces you to think and act at least intentionally. Like Kevin Kelly talks about the intentional use of tools. If we have time, I want to talk about that. But like that, that the fact remains at base level that we are coding at least the fundamental building blocks of what will become this thing, right? And I
Yes
wonder.
and no.
Okay, and that's sort of what I mean. Like, there's parts
So, for
that.
example, let me
Okay.
just break it down for the audience, just to
Thank you.
understand, so that people get what I'm referring to. Let's talk about the latest Go example,
Okay.
where the best human player of Go got defeated by a machine, and it got defeated with a process called deep learning, where the machine was not necessarily programmed to play Go, but basically was fed a huge database of millions upon millions of previous games of Go. And it didn't even start with Go. It started by playing Tetris and all kinds of,
Right.
1980s,
Yeah.
video
Slang
games.
Atari games, right?
Exactly. So, and it basically figured out on its own how to play the games. It discovered its own rules, it discovered its own tricks, and that's what machine learning is all about.
Right.
So you see, we give them the example, or not one example, but millions upon millions of examples.
Right.
And then they discover the threats, what binds each of those examples, and the best way to utilize them in a particular situation. So they're not necessarily programmed in
Right.
the old-fashioned sense, but rather it's through a process of self-discovery or machine learning based on examples provided by us. So that's the idea
Okay.
that I'm pushing here.
And I think that's definitely important to listen to, but people are actually actively trying to encode for ethics now. Like, it's one thing. I mean, like, the whole OpenAI is about that, right? They're poaching multi-million-dollar talent from all over the place, paying them less, and having them hopefully try and create an AI that will at least in part be open source. The general idea is that it should go out to everybody, not just to some military government organization or something like that. So there's an active intent by the people that are acting in this space. Not all of them, probably, which is, I think, why Elon Musk wants to be first. There's an active intent to code for that, and maybe you can't. Maybe that's impossible because it'll just get to some point where it outstrips that and then goes back to
Yeah, I mean, that's cool myself.
yeah, where it just gets completely and totally away from that. Even if even if its base code is basically like these are the particular boundaries. Like even like coding from the jump, saying, hey, before you do anything, ask us what we think. Right? You could code for that from the jump,
Right, but
and eventually
so,
it might not care. But again,
but so-
hopefully trying to.
first of all, we don't have consensus on what we think. To
Right. Well,
code it.
yeah. At the end of the day,
Right.
even if it was just asking Elon Musk, I'd be all right with that.
I wouldn't personally, and
How come?
and because I mean, Elon Musk is a human being just like all of us, and
Right.
and if I've learned anything after talking to 200 of the smartest people, as I said before, is that super smart people tend to do super dumb things quite often. And you can be brilliant in one area.
Right.
Idiocy and brilliance or genius are roommates, and they live under the same roof.
Right. Right.
And you can do brilliant stuff in one field, and you can do very stupid stuff in another field, and actually quite often that is exactly the case with all those people.
Right. And I definitely don't suggest that they have only one moral impetus. Period. That's kind of. I mean, that just as a reductive argument, that would be better than getting turned into a paperclip. Maybe not forever, but initially.
I don't know. I honestly I don't see how I can judge that potential.
I mean, I guess like getting turned into a paperclip and the entire world getting turned into a paperclip, bad.
I feel like we're writing a Douglas Adams novel.
We probably are.
But you see, Douglas Adams was actually a genius of humor and scientific understanding and
100%.
communicating it to the masses. He's one of my most favorite writers, and every time I feel bad, I have the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in my car, and also as an audiobook. So I play the beginning, like the first 15 or 20 minutes every
that's
time
awesome.
I feel bad about something, and it instantaneously makes me feel better.
Right? Your planet is not getting destroyed to make way for an interstellar bypass.
Nicola, you can't take credit for the things your kids do, but you can, like you said, you can set them in motion. And my oldest daughter actually has the Hitchhiker's Guide thumb on her. She has a tattoo on her left arm.
Nice.
So
Wow.
yeah, you set her on the right path.
There you go. There you
There
go.
you go.
Oh man. Man, see, like I got like 18,000 pages of notes right here. We haven't gone through, and this is perfect. So let me jump around just a little bit. Intel said that Moore's law is coming to an end. What are your thoughts on that?
Probably yes, and probably not. So probably yes, because the idea is that once we start approaching something like 5 nanometers, then we have issues such as leakage.
Right.
We have the Heisenberg uncertainty principle kicking in and all kinds of problems. However, that's only true about the current design, which is
Like the silicon chip, what a
yes,
2D silicon chip. I
2D
always think about
silicon
like
chip
right.
based on, I think the term was lithography or something like that.
Yep.
Whereas we have many other possibilities like 3D chips, like photonic chips. Some are proposing neuro chips or chips which are taking inspiration from biology. Some are actually proposing chips that would actually use biological organisms for processing and or storage of data.
Right.
So right now, we don't see, or at least I haven't seen, what the next realm or the next paradigm will be. And we're already at about 10 nanometers or so.
Right.
So we are going to get to the 5 nanometer barrier within the next maybe 3 to 5 years.
And it'll stall out.
And if we don't see anything, in the meantime to jump to, then it will stall out, it will slow down. It may be for a period of time, so we don't know why, or it may be just that exactly at that time, like it's happened in the past, we would be able to change to another paradigm.
Like quantum computing or something.
Possibly quantum computing. There's many options.
Right. So I think Kurzweil talks about that with his S curves, right? Like you have, like they took the glass tubes as transistors to its functional endpoint for Moore's law, and then they're like, well, it's done. Computers are over, and then they come up with the transistor, and that causes a whole other 2 decades. And then the lithography, the silicon chip, that does a whole thing. I think it's pretty reasonable to say that with 3D chips, they're going to be able to keep going for a little while and extend it. But as it starts to slow down, more R&D goes to what's next, right? And then you might plateau for a little bit, but then the next S curve could be what did they say about the quantum computer, that if it's actually working the way they think it is, it's like 100 million times faster than what's going on right now?
Yeah, Google. I actually interviewed a few years ago. I interviewed the chief technology officer, Jordi Rose of. It's a Canadian company that makes those quantum machines. It's called D-Wave, and as an interesting side note, he's a wrestling champion and squats with 400 pounds.
Really?
Very interesting guy.
Holy crap.
Yeah, Jordi Rose. Yeah, and he said that jiu-jitsu is like ballet once you've done wrestling. Anyway, because he did wrestling competitively for many years and then went to do jiu-jitsu and was like kicking ass or something. So fascinating guy. Anyway, so recently Google, who is one of the people who owns one of the 3 machines that they have produced for the last few years, and each of those machines is probably around, I don't know, $20 million or so, give or take. They said that they've discovered finally, or they supposedly have the proof that in certain conditions, that machine performs 100 million times faster than a classic Turing machine. Right. And therefore, that will be considered to be the first evidence that it is, in fact, a quantum machine, and it's not
it's not just using
Turing design.
Classical,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what they'll come up with next. I totally just feel just after looking at precedent, at history, the second that one paradigm starts to slow down, they start dumping billions of dollars, and chances are there's a bunch of research papers that have already shown how to do it that just aren't getting any funding because they're too sort of DARPA level crazy right now, but that could get some funding down the road. Yeah, I think one of the interesting translations that I can't remember if Kevin Kelly came up with this. I think he mentioned it, but it seems like a more useful tool to talk about. I know Kurzweil talked about this, about price performance instead of just how many transistors can you fit on the head of a pin, you know? Sorry, you caught that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to think I'm witty. Anyway, so as far as the
we all like to think that.
I know, right? Yeah.
That's one thing about us humans.
So
and we're proud of it so much that we want to say that's what makes us so unique and different too.
Right? That or sarcasm. So, do you think that an artificial super, assuming that it's benevolent, just because it's more fun and way less turning into a paper clippy, in that case where there was a true benevolent AI that like most of the thinking or feeling human beings could look at this and be like, no, this is like the nicest freaking thing. Like Siri, like the way that she talks, only Siri 10.0 is literally only ever doing what is good, the best for each individual. For example, whoever knows what that looks like. Do you think that it can basically? I feel like it could basically easily control the markets, as well as basically.
It can control us like puppets,
Right. So and
like
that.
marionettes.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's so that actually brings up the whole wireheading that Yampolsky talks about, as far as just
Exactly.
getting addicted that way.
So
But I
if
also
you're
feel like
not able to get to its level, it will
yeah.
be like a god compared to us.
Oh,
And
100%.
it will be able to manipulate and do anything it wants with us, with our planet, with anything it wants to do anything with.
Right. But this is the version where it's nice though.
But
I mean,
but look,
this is I'm holding on to this original conceit.
you can be a nice big brother too, but do you want to live in an environment like that? I'm not
Well,
sure.
but I think that providing us free will is a functional element of being benevolent, even if that sometimes gets us in trouble.
And that means not controlling. So going back to the children example,
Right.
sometimes you have to let them fall on their knees and get hurt a little bit and cry
Agreed.
a little bit.
Yep.
And you can't always protect them. And when they get to learn to ride a bicycle, they have to fall a few times sometimes and so on. So you have to create a realm of freedom.
Right.
And I'm so and what's the range or the expanse of that realm? That's a very personal kind of issue. You're like, well, let's assume Siri doesn't tells everyone for their own best good, but what if my best good and your best good are mutually exclusive or contradictory? Then
Could you define a situation where that mutual exclusivity would be actual and permanent?
well, let's say you like to cross-dress like an octopus, and my religion tells me that if I walk on the street and I see someone who is cross-dressed like an octopus,
Right.
it's the greatest offense that I can ever suffer.
Right. Since
and
your
I
religion is
instantly needs to
entirely
come and
right.
kill you.
Yeah,
or
no,
something
it's
like that.
since your religion is entirely made up, you don't get to have an opinion. Again,
There are
if
real religions
if
that have real problems with real.
no, I absolutely agree, but I think that's one of those things where your free will to think whatever you want should never impose on anyone else's free will to do whatever they want, right? And that so you're basically saying that a moral judgment that was passed down by a book that was probably ridiculous, because I mean everyone loves octopuses to to further the argument. Have you ever read Ian Banks' The Culture novels?
No.
Oh, dude,
No.
just do all of that. I mean, his vision of artificial intelligence really far in the future. Let me try and give a bit of a snippet, because it's every single one of the books is brilliant. I would start with Matter, if you want to, because they're good. Anyway,
I have many gaps in my education, and that's definitely one of them.
of everybody that I've read, he's got the most sort of optimistic version of artificial intelligence. So you have these sort of, they call them minds. You basically imagine a giant city-sized ship. I also love anything with spaceships in it, so obviously I'm biased. They like each one of these minds basically runs a giant ship with a giant city on it. People are allowed to do whatever they want, but they have a clear control of violence, right? They've got a monopoly on violence, because they're constantly reading everything that's going on in your neurological system. You are allowed to do whatever you want, whenever you want. The second that any physical violence can go towards any other human, you just get stopped, right? Because they're thinking billions of times ahead, and they're thinking and sort of doing a bunch of adventures, and I call it, like, his books are really, really well put together and very, very smart on a number of different levels. I'm trying to simplify it to tell a story horribly, but what they also do, which I find fascinating, like, while they're basically letting us do whatever we want, they're kind of going wherever they want, but as a consensus for where everybody else wants to go, and so it's like a big network, yada yada there's obviously no resource that we can't have. Like when you talk about us being able to be and do whatever we want, they're the ones facilitating it, right? Like, so the AI is functionally allowing you to become a part of it if you want to. You can become a girl if you want to. You can become an octopus if you want to. Have at it, Haas. You can actually just be part of the virtual reality if you want. There's obviously a construct that's just exactly like the ship or completely different. Doesn't matter. But one of the more fascinating things is they have a realm that is beyond that where they basically are hanging out with the AI, and they're, it's like a technological, intellectual, hallucinogenic jam session for super intelligent beings, right? But so he tries to encompass every possible level of what a benevolent AI would look like and where that would interact. And matter is all about, I mean, it's a kind of a pun, but it's all in a situation, a space where, human beings are basically outstripped in every possible way. What point is there? And so he basically describes a bunch of point, like in a situation where all the resources are completely and totally abundant because they're all being controlled by an AI. You can have, do, be whatever you want. Then it's up to us to have and do and be whatever we want. It's only up to us to ask that question. And the only boundary condition is that the second that you try to harm anyone else, you get stopped. Right?
Sure, and that sounds like a very nice kind of a utopic vision of the future.
Right. Or protopic, to quote Kevin Kelly, because you still have to, it's still basically on you to sort of self-distinguish yourself, and you can talk to the AI and get any kind of help that you want from the AI. But at the end of the day, you're effectively running your own life still, and you can do whatever you want, and you can feel intimidated by all the AIs being super capable. Or you could just, make some Lego sandcastles out of planets.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be running my own life if I'm not allowed to make mistakes, because all the mistakes that I've made have made me hopefully learn from them.
Right. So you can, though. You can make as many mistakes as you want. You could also ask for whatever advice you want. You just can't, you're not allowed to hurt anyone else. You can do anything else.
Physically, and
physically.
Does psychological torture count in that?
I think they would probably step in, considering they are all knowing and all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, in that situation, I mean, would you want to be able to psychologically damage someone else? I mean, imagine this. So we're having a conversation like this, and
no, I wouldn't.
Right, but you still want to learn, right? So you're in a situation where you're sort of hitting an emotional red line, or I don't know, something. The AI can, basically put thoughts in your head because it can control whatever, right?
Right.
But not, it's basically got its own directive. And again, this is super hippy dippy benevolent AI, right? But still, for the sake of this argument, there's nothing stopping it from a gentle suggestion, like, hey, do you know what you're doing right now? Right? This is actually causing emotional damage. Is that your intent? Because if it's not, you should stop. Like a phone call from Siri, basically. Right?
Every time you're about to make a mistake, or well, not to make a mistake, but
to actively
hurt
cause damage to somebody else.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it. You get a phone call from Siri.
Right. And hey, I can't technically stop you right now, but like you're being a dick.
It's an interesting scenario. I haven't read the book. It's an interesting scenario. For me, though, what worries me is that kind of power over not only one individual, but all of humanity, all of intelligence,
And everything, right?
is kind of very scary to me. And so maybe it can be so benevolent and so utopian and so nice, but it's scary to me because what if it isn't?
Yeah,
And,
I mean that.
or
yeah.
what if it changes its mind? So, and it's just so much power and control that's entirely outside of me, that we, as individuals and also as a species, we stop to be any agents of independent agents of action, and everything is done within this kind of totally manipulated, limited pool of possibilities that's presented. So you never have true freedom. Now, is it the case that safety and abundance and sort of happiness and utopia all necessitate that you surrender your freedom to a certain degree?
So
maybe for
they're
some people the answer is yes. For me, is I
right.
don't know. It kind of scares me.
I think that's definitely a valid line of thought. And in a couple of Ian Banks novels, he actually has people just bug out. They're basically, and for exactly that reason. Like it's the and I sort of envision it like, there's people in our culture now. I mean, most people in our culture now have already abdicated every bit of free will. They don't ever spend any time thinking or acting intentionally at all, right? And that's something that I very much want to combat for my podcast. Full stop, like that. If I could do nothing else with my podcast except, as you say, wake a couple people up, like two, that would be awesome. Um, I think we've already done a little bit better than that, but it any one single person deciding to do anything intentionally, I think is a huge win. But there are people in our society that just decide to step out, and not only do they step out, but they're in the backwoods. They're not paying taxes. They're not, what I mean. They're basically they're doing the extreme version of what you're talking about now, right? Right now, we're in a situation where the government controls any amount of things. There's already an attempt to have a monopoly on violence. That's the entire form of the American Republic right there. So in our forms of government, we're already creating an example for what these AI would want to do anyway. We're doing a shitty job more often than not, but that functionally is what civilization does. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, the very definition of government is that entity which controls the monopoly over violence
Right.
in a certain territory
Yep.
or in a certain geographical area. That's what government is all about. That's the first function or the first, or at least I'm a recovering political scientist, so that's kind of
Right.
like
No, I
what
think
was back in the books. Like, because if you don't have monopoly over violence in an area, then you have nothing
well,
because
then
everything is based on that.
if you can't control violence, you can't control currency, and so you don't have a government.
Right. The laws, the courts, the executive system, you
So
know, everything falls apart.
by this argument, wouldn't it make more sense, because abdicating any freedom whatsoever is horrible, that we should all move back to the woods?
No, I didn't say abdicating any freedom is horrible. I said
Oh.
abdicating freedom to the point where everything that you ever do is in this containment circle.
Well, right now
That
we live
they
in that.
know everything about you, that
Right.
you're monitored. But I don't think right now the government especially has not even the vaguest idea or capacity to do anything remotely to what you described on that sheet.
No, I,
of
I,
that
I
book.
agree. I mean, it's carrying it
Maybe we're
to the
getting
nth degree.
there,
Right.
but we're certainly not there yet.
I think
And-
it's a difference in scale, not in kind.
right, and there's something very important here. People must have the freedom to opt out.
And they do. In these culture novels, people literally just go like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm taking off." Most don't, because most are too busy hanging out in the Matrix, going like, "Hey, I want to learn kung fu today."
And sure, and that's where personal choice comes. So, for
Right.
example, you can call them the techno-Amish if you want, but here in Ontario, where I live, we have some very nice communities of Mennonites and of Amish people.
Right.
Who are basically stuck probably somewhere in the 19th century, and basically make a living with farming, or sheep raising, or anything like that. And I'm proud that I live in a country and in a place where people have that choice.
Right.
If they don't want to be a part of the modern Canadian society, they can choose to do that.
Right.
And you can do that all over the U.S. too. And I think those are good societies because they allow the freedom of you to opt in or to opt out. And if you put everyone on a ship, then by definition, no one can opt out.
No, they
And
can, though.
especially- Right.
Right. And again, in this particular conceit, right, which I think is mainly useful because it allows us to. I mean, anytime that I feel like there's a lot of worry and concern, I think that's extremely valid and entirely fair and something that we need to think about. But in the same way that thinking only about negative things in your life makes sure that nothing good will happen,
Sure.
like envisioning that most positive of futures, I think is the most valuable thing that we could do, because then somebody might be near the AI right at the right time and be like, hey, have you read the culture novels by Ian Banks? That's a good starting place to
But that's your value system speaking to you as to what's a good starting
Well,
place.
but I
For
think-
me,
I think-
it would be better starting place if we're on an equal basis with those entities rather than them being the gods and us being, puppets.
But if that's impossible, right? Like in a hard, like obviously that's what Roman was talking about as far as creating a slowdown to like, hey, you could
Right.
bootstrap yourself into a god, but could you wait 10 minutes so that we could have a little conversation?
Right.
Right. I think
Yes.
that's huge. So listen, like we're coming up on 90 minutes. I literally could do this all day because this conversation
So
is
can I.
fantastic. All right, I want to respect your time, and honestly, I want to go as long as you want to go because I feel like we're getting into some crazy nitty gritty on some stuff that is super fun. Okay, so you've
You're
been
in
trying to.
charge. It's your show, so you run it for as long as you think it's worthy.
Oh, dude, I don't know if you want to say that. You have any plans for tomorrow? Okay, so one question that I really want to ask, and this is sort of a potentially long-winded one. You've been trying to get an interview with Elon Musk. I'm kind of annoyed that you haven't gotten it yet, since you've talked to literally everybody else. So I'm gonna send him an email, and basically I'm sure that'll get it done.
Please do.
Could you imagine if I sent him
I'll
an
send
email?
you a thank you card if it does happen.
Can you imagine if I sent him like a random email and the next day he's like, I'll talk to you. Believe me, they won't be connected. It'll just be really funny. Anyway, so if you got that interview, what would you ask him that nobody else has really asked him?
Ah, well, that's a good question. You see, the problem with me answering that question is twofold. First, I'd like to do a crash course of homework research right before the interview.
I totally resemble that comment.
Because one thing I've learned in the past is that, if I'm planning to interview somebody, let's say in banks,
Right.
I don't go to interview, I don't go to read a lot of Ian Bax's books now, and then for whatever period in the future I end up interviewing him, I kind of try to recollect them. No, I do that right before the interview because, I'm only human.
Yeah.
And my retention is very low, very poor. And the more data we churn through my processor, the less retention I think is capable of. It's
Right.
wearing out. It's overheating. So memory space is running low. Hard drive needs to be upgraded. So basically, I do very intense period between any interview I do, and sometimes that period can be 1 or 2 days, and sometimes it can be 2 or 3 weeks of very deep emergence into that personality and their work to be as prepared as possible.
Right. Yeah, I literally have been listening to Singularity One-on-One podcast since 3 days ago. And I've been listening for a long time, so it's fun to be doing the review, but I wanted to not do a horrible job. So I guess opening it up to not being the penultimate singular question, just off the top of your head, what should we be curious about with what? I mean, there's so many things that Elon Musk does that is ridiculous. He just decided after PayPal, like, hey, I'm gonna be a rocket scientist now. Okay. What are you most interested about what he's doing, and would just like off the cuff answers?
Well, so interviews and conversations are a living thing. So it's like a dance. It's like, I don't want to call it a boxing match, so it's better if you call it a dance, even though some people would say that the boxing match is a type of a dance.
Right.
In other words, it takes two to tango. And in other words, what that means is that what that means is that you have to feel the connection and the energy with your interlocutor, with your interviewee, with your friend that you're having a conversation with. And each occurrence, each conversation, each interview is a unique event. And, for me, it's happened many times. Well, many times more than I have wanted. But when I had problems with the recording or something happened on the technical end of things during an interview, and I have to reshoot it. And the conversation never ends up being the same.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
As it was when the problem happened.
Right.
So those things are unique. They're like a dance. So in other words, I hope that I am able to connect with him, and I hope that after certain period, because it takes maybe 20 or 30 to 45 minutes for people to warm up and sort of let their guard down and maybe become their authentic selves.
Right.
Hopefully, if they have the right environment, and then I hope I bring forth something new and something unique out of him in that moment, and maybe of me, but especially of him, because he's going to be the star of the show, as all of my interviews are. It's not about me; it's about them and their work.
100%.
And so this is what I aim for in every interview that I've ever done, and which is another reason why I go after the long format interview. Because if you're doing a 10 or 20 or 30-minute interview, even, most of those people have done 10,000s of them, and they have their prefab answers, and they're just ready to spit them out. And we
Right.
all do that stuff.
Yep.
But my subversive goal is to derail any person that comes to my show, to make them comfortable enough on the one hand, and on the other hand, to derail them from their usual tracks and take them in a new space. And hopefully in that new space, they will discover something new for themselves, something new for us, and we can watch it happen. And out of 200 interviews, that's probably happened half a dozen times. But every time when it's happened, it's been amazing. And people have told me this was the best interview I've ever done.
Right.
So again, sorry for giving you this elusive answer, but I hope it kind of gives you an idea where I'm coming from.
Oh no,
You know? It's like asking a boxer, how are you going to punch your opponent? Or,
right.
What's the best punch?
Well, and that's the thing. Elon Musk totally listens to this podcast, so he might be too ready for you for when you actually do talk to him.
Then
For the record,
let's
he
dance.
for sure does not listen to this podcast.
Let's dance then.
Yeah, right. There you go. Let's dance. Oh man. All right. So that was a couple of very, very strong evasions to that question. Well done. Have you heard Cal Fussman on Tim Ferriss?
Yes.
Okay.
He's the storyteller.
Yeah. I
You see, perfect example. So he told a story about having to interview Mikhail Gorbachev for 5 minutes.
Right.
For 5 minutes. So
forgot
he
about
was
that one.
supposed to do an interview with Gorbachev for 30 minutes. That got shrunk to 20, then 10, and then finally he got told you got 5. I kind of was forced to do the same thing with Noam Chomsky. Because originally we were supposed to do a 1-hour interview with him.
Right.
Then his assistant told me, no, he can only do half an hour.
Right.
And we had it scheduled 6 months ahead of time. Then, right before the interview, she told me, you got 20 minutes, leave it or take it.
What?
And I was like, oh, you're killing me, Bev, you're killing me. And then I did the kind of the not nice thing is I kind of pushed him back to the 30-minute range. But he did it willingly. He stayed the extra 10 minutes with me, so his interview ended up being 30 minutes. But going back to Cal, he only had 5 minutes with Gorbachev.
Right.
And he started with the killer question, and now I see where you're coming from, which was, what's the best lesson you learned from your dad?
Right. Just like, skadoosh.
Right, and then Gorbachev in turn canceled his consequent 1 or 2 appointments or delayed them terribly and said, I want to speak to this guy.
Right.
Right? But again,
Did it end up being about ice cream?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
His dad took him for ice cream.
Exactly.
And
right.
it just solved all the world's problems.
Well, it surely made a big difference for the end of the Cold War. And
Right.
all that
I mean,
stuff.
by solving all the world, it literally made a historical difference on the planet. That one question.
Absolutely. And well, not that question. The ice cream event made the impression on Mikhail Gorbachev, and then he kind of was willing to negotiate with Reagan and kind
Right.
of bring us back from the brink of nuclear extinction. And then Kao just basically managed
Ask the question. Right. To
plug
get
in.
it out of him. Right.
But that's the dance I was talking about, and that's
Right.
the dance that happens here. Kao somehow, based to his incredible experience and ability to connect with people and tell stories and see things that others cannot, was able to engage into this dance in his head ahead of time. It's like, going into the boxing ring or doing martial arts and throwing punches and blocking before you actually go into the fight. Seeing it all in your head and coming up with a strategy beforehand, And he came up with the best opening line so that he can captivate the attention of Gorbachev and kind of sell him on the idea this is worth more of your time than just 5 minutes, right? And so, but that's the dance that we have to do, and that depends on the preparation. So I never did homework in school, ever. I was known as the kid that never ever did homework, and I was the only one who was allowed to not do homework because people had already given up on me.
Okay.
They learned their lesson. It's just not worth it. But when it comes to interviewing and doing podcasts with people, you gotta do your homework.
Right.
The more you know, not only about the person's work, but about themselves, who they are, what they believe in, what's their religion, do they have a pet, are
Oh, don't die.
the more they know, the better job, the better interview you're going to do.
I think I just lost you. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, good. Yeah, we had some internet slowdown.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're back. As far as you were talking about the basically.
Yeah, I was saying about doing your own homework. So
Yeah.
the more you know about a person, about whether they have a dog, whether they have a cat, whether they have a parrot, whether they're divorced, whether they have kids, what kind of car they drive, what's their hobby, what they like to do in their free time, all of that stuff helps you connect with them during an interview and
Right.
dance, do that kind of a dance. And that's the stuff that's going to allow you to have an opening to connect, to be authentic yourself, but to let them be their own best authentic selves. And then hopefully the magic happens.
I have absolutely no argument for that whatsoever.
So, for example, the way you won me for this interview, right? And I'm kind of running a fundraiser right now, so I'm kind of super busy, but is with your opening, is with the clip on Facebook that you put together, is
Right.
with your genuine enthusiasm, it's with your authentic self, it's with your doing your homework and putting the effort into preparing that clip and all of that. And I could have said no and everything could have been wasted,
Yeah.
but I didn't, because I was impressed. And that's first a great way to break the ice, but it's also a great way to connect with somebody, and it's also a great way to sort of put it at a whole other different level.
Right.
So, and all those things do make a big difference.
Thanks for noticing that. I want all of my listeners and audience to know as well just the amount of advice, and we've been like sort of shooting the shit on Facebook and stuff, and it's just thank you very much for that. I mean, I know that you dissemble, because I probably would too every time I call you like a podcasting hero of mine, but I mean everyone knows by now that is an actual fact. So getting to I mean, obviously that Cal Fussman article, I was thinking about it the whole time for this interview, because that's exactly what I want to do. And it was interesting because, I mean, the story that you were telling right at the beginning, I know that story. I listened to that story twice in the last 2 days. It's a good story, so I wanted to ask anyway, right? Like, I knew what I was getting with that question.
Sure.
But I think that context is so much more important when we start talking about, sort of like just suggestive possibilities, or any kind of anecdotal evidence we have. Like, we've already set up, and this is what I wanted to do anyway. We've set up your credibility, and I mean, I kind of did with the video a little bit because that's how I see it personally, for real. But when we talk about really really high end concepts and just arbitrary ethical potential situations and stuff, I want people to be like, I want people to basically be sitting on the edge of their chairs for what you have to say. And I think we established that a little bit, because I mean, it's you've got some real world fucking credibility. Excuse my French, but I mean, seriously, it's a real thing. So thank you very much for coming and doing this. I have at least one more question. Oh, so we kind of touched on this before. How many iterations would it take for measurably successful uploads before you would do it? Or would you?
I don't know, but based on what I've learned so far and what I've seen so far, I wouldn't do it anytime soon.
Right. I mean, that's
We're
again
very far
contingent
from it.
on being measurably successful in
So-
somehow, which is a whole other bunch of questions.
Yeah, if I'm kind of convinced, I don't know if there's a proper Turing test for mind uploading, but eventually there must be one. tests that can basically say yes or no. Did that person upload or did they not?
Right.
And once we have kind of a multiple proof that that technology and that thing works, then I would certainly consider it. But then on the other hand, though, if I'm able to do my best and live a good life in meat space, and if I am able to enhance it, and if I'm able to defeat aging and make it flexible, make my biology flexible, and I can change for Halloween, for example, turn into a green octopus as we discussed, or whatever. I don't know why I have the green octopus
Yeah,
idea in my head today.
I was gonna say that's
kind of weird.
It's pretty
Right.
specific.
I know.
And honestly, I didn't know it was green till right now. That's a whole other thing.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a fan of the Beatles, so I was listening maybe to the Beatles before that. But anyway,
Okay.
so maybe the next thing is a yellow submarine that's coming out of the back of my head.
Yeah,
I
your
have no
best
idea.
friend's going as the Yellow Submarine for sure.
But the idea is, though, that maybe I would choose to upload, maybe not. And
Right.
even if I upload, that doesn't need to be permanent, but you can then rematerialize in meat space again. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you need to do interstellar or intergalactic space travel,
Yeah, you don't want to do that as DNA.
right. So then it's best to do it as an upload. But once you get to your destination, wherever that may be,
Right.
then it may be best to become meat puppet again.
Yeah. So after this interview, I'm mailing you the book Matter by Ian Banks, and because then you're gonna want to read the other 9. I mean, he talks about. I mean, this is all just part and parcel. I mean, there's awesome stories around it, but the way that he describes that is all basically. I mean, and it popularizes that. I shouldn't say popularizes. It kind of normalizes it. That kind of thing lives in his stories like they were always obvious. And I think that's why, I have a sort of a hyper optimistic view of AI, because I've seen it. I've seen what it might look like, and I've seen, because he talks about the problems with it. It's not all, just pure utopia. It really is trying to sort of create a better protopia all the time, and not successfully all the time. So there's some back and forth elements, but where you can upload, download, but then you can have copies, and then you can reintegrate the copies, but then both copies have to agree, and what are the ethics of that? Like, it gets into the nitty gritty of everything. But you brought up the life extension in meat space. You have interviewed Abir Gray, who's trying to solve every kind of problem with aging. The CEO of BioViva, as well as Michael Fossil, who's basically on the telomerase side of the whole equation. What is your feel? Like, have you? What's the lady's name from BioViva? I forgot to get her name.
Liz Parrish.
Okay, so she took basically a.
Bill Andrews is, by the way, the other guy who is pushing the telomere lengthening idea.
Sorry, what's that name again?
Bill Andrews. He's
Okay.
the co-protagonist together with Aubrey de Grey in a documentary movie
Right.
called The Immortalists.
Yeah, I've seen it. So have you talked to that? Sorry, what was the lady's name again?
Liz Parrish.
Liz Parrish. Have you talked to Liz since she started taking her own cocktail?
Sure, yeah, I have.
How's she doing? Didn't Aubrey de Grey say don't talk to me until after she's been alive for a week after taking it?
Yeah, he did say something like that. We did an interview with her maybe, I don't know, 3 months or so after she had done her test. And, people can go and watch it and judge for themselves. I think I myself, I need more time and I need more data.
Right, like a study N of 1 is only ever going to be
First,
dubious
a
at
study
best.
of one is not ever enough.
Right.
Because each of us is unique, but also, I know very little about, and she has revealed very little about the vector that they used, about all kinds of things. So I need more data and more evidence, and hopefully we need to be able to reproduce or replicate the alleged results. And also the problem with Liz is that she's so healthy to begin with.
Right. She's basically a marathon runner who is now maybe slightly healthier than she was before, right?
Yeah, I don't know if she's a marathon runner, but
Yeah, I
she's
made that up.
very fit. She's very fit. She's vegetarian or vegan. She looks much younger than her age. So it's very hard to say that she looks better or is fitter. I mean, she did say that her muscle mass has increased and that her fat has diminished. So
Right.
basically, she's gained clean muscle mass, which is one of the side effects of those things, of the two things that she tested for.
So they were basically looking for that as what should happen.
Right, because one of the things that she was testing was a therapy to fight sarcopenia or muscle wasting disease.
Okay.
And of course, you fight muscle wasting disease by increasing muscle, diminishing fat, and
Right.
all of that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, she is exhibiting those traits. Now, she's also, as I said, eating very healthy and being very active in terms of sports and so on. So is that a normal, byproduct of her workouts and her nutrition? Is that, based on the therapy? How can we differentiate one from the other? Like, I just don't know the data
Right.
yet.
There's not enough. Right. Okay.
So, I mean, people should watch the interview and judge for themselves. I'm hopeful that it turns out to be the case. I just don't know if it is the case yet.
Right. Yeah, I'll throw it in the show notes. I'm definitely going to be making a monster blog post from this episode because I think it's gonna be really fun for me to revisit it. So Aubrey de Grey is taking the I think he said like there's 6 or 7 major symptoms of aging, and he basically wants to create technologies to counter all of them.
I think he calls them the 7 deadly sins of aging or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like a guy who looks like a cross between Rasputin and Jesus. I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, the Rasputin thing is hilarious that you bring into the video.
I mean, seriously, you can't ever look at a picture of him ever again and think that guy's Rasputin right there.
He's very tall too, just like Rasputin was, right? So
Right.
Aubrey is probably 6'4" or 6'5".
Right.
And he's very, very lean and skinny. So I'm 6'1", he's towering over me.
Right, that's crazy.
But he's probably 50 pounds lighter than me too. So,
He's like a two-dimensional being, basically.
which makes him very interesting person. And with his beard and his presence and all that.
Right. Well, watching his TED Talk was so fun because he's basically like, listen, like everyone thinks, and I talk to so many people that exhibit this constantly. We're so ingrained to be horrified of death, right? And so we've developed whole religions basically to just soothe people who are scared of death, which is, I mean, that's fine.
But that's in the West, by the way.
What's that?
That's mainly in the West. In the East, it's not necessarily like that.
Interesting. Okay, I hadn't thought of that.
So, for example, if you go to places like Manila, in the Philippines and other places like Tibet, in Manila you would find a number of people living inside of the cemeteries together and among the graveyards and the dead people basically, and giving birth and cooking and doing laundry and raising their children and eating all there in basically the cemetery.
Wow.
In other cultures in South America, there were cases in the past where people would sleep with a mummy of their grandparents or something like that.
So I guess are
So
those people?
death was not necessarily considered to be foreign or unnatural.
Were
or
they
a
still scared of it,
taboo,
though?
Like, sorry?
Were they still scared of it though?
No.
Like just people they're totally
Life and death were
ready to-
considered and are considered still in many parts of the world to be one and the same thing. Just like yin and yang or left and right and up
Right.
and down, and there's no life without death, and therefore you couldn't be scared of it.
Right. So I guess this sort of brings up the same two main questions that I get all the time that I find deeply fascinating. I mean, Aubrey de Grey brings up the general idea that we don't have to accept it. And just that, everyone's like, "What do you mean?" And then people start saying stuff like, "Well, we have to die. Why? I mean, you have no evidence of what happens afterwards, right?" And people are like, "Don't you want to like see what comes after?" Sure, in about 20,000 years, maybe longer, right? Because for all we know, and for all evidence purpose, literally nothing, right? There's nothing. I mean, that's the sort of event horizon of a singularity that nobody's been really on the other side of. Anecdotal evidence to the contrary, maybe, right? So you get that, and because he talks about it in the documentary as well, like just being flabbergasted at if we are a deterministic biological machine, and I personally believe that that's completely and totally the case, then we should just be able to solve for X, right? You can fix the engine in a car. You can fix whatever's wrong with us. Is it a dramatically more complicated situation? Sure, but we can now build things that are a little bit more complicated than a Chevy. So watching that, but then there's people that also say, with the fear of death, right? That's one side. But then some people still are like, don't you want to die to experience that? And I'm like, no.
And even if you do, it would be better to do it at the moment of your own choosing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing.
Rather than when you're forced to.
Yeah. Exactly. It comes right back down to anything that provides more free will or personal agency, I guess, is probably.
Or you can choose to, as Corey Doctorow calls it, be a deadhead for a little while, so you can go be dead for a couple of centuries and then come back and check out the world and see if you can rediscover your passion for life.
Yeah, the culture novels do that because, of course, everyone is basically as immortal as they want to be. So there's whole ships that are just dedicated to being storage. And this one, so this one ship, they basically are like, this one ship has kind of got a twisted mind, they assume, right? Because all it does is it stores human beings that want to be, like you said, dead for a little while. But it makes gigantic, perfect recreations of like 1800s war scenes, but with actual people that are like frozen, and so you basically walk into like square kilometer fields of like World War II scenes and stuff, but with real people that are just frozen in time. Anyway, yeah, I'm totally gonna send you one of these books because I think you're totally gonna dig it. It's clearly in my head, up in my grill. So yeah, I find it even living in a world where we have people that are daring to ask those questions and not trivially, right? I mean, he's clearly working on these things already. Do you think that he's making significant ground? I know he's been trying to get some funding. Is there movement on what he's doing?
Well, he's been raising a couple of successful fundraisers to address very specific conditions, which is, of course, great because much of the problem is that sometimes because there is no ability to make money from addressing a certain condition, whether it's because you can't patent some kind of intellectual property or it's just not profitable in terms of business terms, companies have no incentive to do any research and development in drugs or therapies to address those conditions.
Right.
And so he is trying to participate in very important research and development. So he's not trying, he is doing it. So surely, I don't know how close he's getting. I should get him back on my show because it's been a couple of years since the last time he was on my show. But I believe in general, we are making substantial progress, not only him, but in many other medical fields, in many other medical conditions, we're making huge progress. Now, of course, progress is always, or much of the time anyway, slower than we hope for or wish for.
Right.
But sometimes, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, as pointed out by Roman Yampolsky, that may actually be a good thing.
Right.
So, there's been a lot of progress in the medical field and medical science, and actually I'm hopeful that we would be able to defeat aging before we have to upload.
Right.
So, because there's two ways to defeat death or aging. One is by uploading, which is to say the body is going to fall apart, but if you upload, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But the other, because then we would move to another stratum, which is, the silicon-based stratum, and then we can sustain that indefinitely.
Right.
Or we can actually figure out how the body works, because it's basically a deterministic, mostly closed system, just like a car example that you gave and that Aubrey gives, but of course much more sophisticated and complicated, but on the same principle, and we can figure it out. And once we do, then we can just keep fixing the body, and therefore there would not necessarily be such a huge impetus to upload, unless you want to move again, as I said, to another galaxy or something like that.
Right.
And I think that based on what I've kind of seen so far, we're much closer along that lines of the sort of a biological immortality.
Yeah.
And not immortality is not the right word, because you can still die.
Right.
by an accident, or as Aubrey says,
Yeah.
by being run over by a truck.
Exactly. Buses are
But
still dangerous.
not from old age, hopefully, right?
Right. Right.
Or from Alzheimer's and any of those cancer and all of those major killers. So I think we're a lot closer along that path than the path of mind uploading, because we're still very, very, very early on in mapping out, let alone even understanding how all of this works.
Right. 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 Yeah. I think the idea of reaching sort of that escape velocity, right? Where
Longevity escape velocity, yes.
right, where the and it's not for sure for anyone. Obviously, it's still the body's still a statistical mess, but and individual to each person. But the whole idea that life expectancy could go up more than a year per year for the entire
Yes.
species, right?
Yes.
That's
That's a fascinating idea, and I
Yeah.
think we're already along the way, because as he says, and according to some estimates, we are already able to improve life expectancy by about 3 months or so per year. So,
Right.
so we're far away from the goal, but I think, as I said, we're a lot closer to it than the alternative path of mind uploading.
right.
In my
and
view, anyway.
No, I think you're totally right, and I also think there's way more R&D that's going to go into that in the near term than will go into to like super intelligent AI systems. Maybe not by much though, but definitely significant. How do you feel just as a concept about the idea of telomere lengthening as sort of like the holy grail?
I'm no expert, so. And as Michael also says, show me the data. So show me that it works. I don't care, honestly. I don't care whether it's telomere lengthening, whether it's the
Right.
7 deadly sins of aging of the cell,
Yeah.
whether it's, I don't know, turmeric and avocado oil. I don't care.
Right.
As long as it works and the data shows it works and it's replicable and we can do it cheaply on a mass scale, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to try it and do it, and that we have it.
I completely and totally agree. I'm gonna do one of those really really soft, awesome segues to a topic that is completely and totally related now. Have you heard of the EM drive?
I have, but it's not bringing the ideas right now to my. So give me.
Okay, so it's NASA's apparently, and a lot of this is pure conjecture. So as far as talking about data,
But less conjecture now than there was a year ago.
Yeah, it's true.
It's
Yeah.
getting less conjectural. And
So
more-
this guy in thanks, Craig. It always, honestly, every time you get on the mic, I'm like, man, I wish I totally sounded as sexy as you do. I just don't. Old school radio
I
voice,
do
man.
that all the time.
Anyway, so this guy in England fires a bunch of microwaves into a closed.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and it defies all the laws of conservation of momentum. All the physicists are pulling their hair out and telling everybody they can't work.
I had a number of people propose that I interview him on my
Yeah, you for sure should.
show. I think I even sent him emails a couple of times. Haven't heard back yet.
Okay,
But,
so
yeah,
I'll send you the article that we read. I did like a deep dive on this. That was the first sort of podcast or blog entry that I tried to do, which was extremely long-winded, and I think sometimes.
Okay, this is where I drop in and tell you that it was a great blog entry.
Oh, thanks.
It was so good. It was engaging and fun and lighthearted and awesome. So
and to me that sounds like almost the voice of God, so we'd better listen
Yes.
to it.
Glory. Your shit was tremendous.
Thanks, God. Oh, dude, that's funny. Yeah. Every once in a while, God's just gonna drop in and drop some knowledge, as it were. Anyway, so there's a guy that. This is where I should totally write down the names to all these things, and I never do. I'm horrible for that. I shouldn't. I'm getting better. Anyway, so this guy does this flyby. Scheuer? No, that's the guy who made it.
Oh,
That's
okay,
not
sorry.
the flyby guy. Jeez, God, get your freaking facts straight. Anyway, so apparently when we do flyby maneuvers with sort of interplanetary satellites and stuff, right, trying to get some speed, you know how all that stuff works. They can measure the vector difference, the speed difference, really really well as it's coming by the Earth, and they noticed that it was jumping up whole values as opposed to moving through them. so it's basically its acceleration was sort of choppy, which defies everything that we know because there's nothing that should be acting on it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy starts conjecturing about UNRWA radiation or black body radiation, which is effectively a body's friction that it creates with space-time as it accelerates compared to that space-time. I would be lying if I said I understand that. Yeah, I basically get it, but it's okay.
That's why I smiled when you said, you know how that stuff works.
Oh yeah, no, dude,
I have no idea.
I'm a singer in a band, but I get under radiation all day. I mean,
We're gonna talk about it anyway.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Like we're authorities. That's how this works. I mean, I think it's only interesting in the sense that I mean, NASA's now been testing this thing for a year. The reason why we started talking about it again is that there's been some leaks that a peer-reviewed paper might be coming out suggesting that it works. China supposedly, again, all this is conjecture, right? China supposedly made one that works. The German team apparently made one that works. People are making them in their garage and saying they're working. A lot of this is all like, it's not an N of one anymore, but it's still all anecdotal as far as this guy is concerned. I mean, I don't have one, so it's all what is actually going on, right? But this guy comes up with a theory about these flybys that is basically that this UNRWA radiation can only exist at certain wavelengths when the difference in speed is very, very small, right? And again, I'm totally a credible person to be able to explain this to you, so that's awesome. So effectively, that's why he's trying to explain the jumping that way. You have these quantum fluctuations that will only allow certain wavelengths because some of them are too big to fit inside the observable universe, so they don't. So then he takes that to this brass cone where they're firing microwaves in and supposedly getting, grams of thrust, which in space would be fantastic, and saying that, it's plausible that what's going on is it's rounding up at the top and it's rounding down at the bottom, and the difference is felt in thrust. And so he calculates an order of magnitude of what that thrust should be, and it's exactly the order of magnitude of what they're getting. So again, like all this is like, maybe this works, but it's still pretty interesting. And then this the Scheuer guy now is saying that he's working with a bunch of aerospace companies in England saying they're getting tons of thrust. Yeah. Again, everyone thought he was crazy before, and he might have been right. So if he's not crazy now, then that could be, I remember you talking a lot about the transportation problem and where's our flying cars. Like Peter Thiel, is whining about that, and all we got was Twitter. Never mind that we can effectively teleport from your office to mine, whatever. But that might actually be coming down the pike. And they're having to reinvent physics to explain what this guy did in his garage.
And there are many, many developments similar to that happening. But by the way, right now, or promising developments anyway. And that progress always comes from outside pretty
Yep.
much.
Yeah.
It rarely comes from the status quo, and it's always the crazy ones, as the old Apple ad said it, that actually make the difference. And, so it will be interesting.
Yeah, that's really all we can say, right? Like, that's fun. Yeah, it was definitely fun to cover. Okay, so we're pushing over 2 hours 15 minutes right now, which I think is awesome. I want to ask at least two more questions. Number one, of everything that you've talked to, I mean, I'm sure you have people ask me if I have a favorite episode. I totally don't. So that's kind of a ridiculous question.
I say that's like asking a parent who's your favorite child.
Right?
Even if you have one.
But see that? Yeah, God has a favorite child.
It's the one with the dog.
Yeah, we all know you like Jesus best. God, settle down. Or Muhammad or whatever. So the sad thing is we only have dogs, and your whole conversation about the dogs before. I've heard that before. I never really thought about it. I'm both excited and mortified because I can extrapolate a lot from the personality of our dogs. And I totally just lost my train of thought by thinking about dogs.
I think you were going to ask him what was his favorite interview that he did.
Yeah, but we're not going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I convinced myself that was a stupid question. And he's right. I mean, so I actually do have a favorite dog. That was the point of that whole thing, because I'm a jackass. So I guess the thing that I want to ask is this. I sort of know the answer and we'll see what the actual one is. With everything going on right now, near term or long term, what terrifies you the most about the future of mankind?
Humanity.
And scene.
You can, yeah, you can call it stupidity, but I can call it humanity too, because that's part of who we are. And that's the scariest thing. You know, I'm not so scared about AI.
Right.
AI is an issue, but it's not the most prescient issue right now.
I agree.
And we know that today there are people who are going to kill us all if they could. And some will do that deliberately. Some will do that not deliberately, just trying to save us. And I'm equally scared from both kinds. And there's other types. So that's what I'm scared the most about. It's us because, and by the way, AI will be one way or another a reflection of us because technology is a reflection of who we are.
Right.
It's a mirror. I call it the magnifying mirror of technology. It's a mirror because it reflects who you are, but it's not a perfect mirror because it magnifies certain features and it shrinks others. And it's not necessarily always predictable, and we don't, because there are always unforeseen circumstances or unforeseen effects or consequences, and we're not always cognizant even of how things are going to shape or come up with, and we're not even cognizant that it is a mirror. And so I call it the magnifying mirror. And in other words, for me, the best way to move forward into the future is to try and put the best image in the mirror in the first place.
Right.
And I'm afraid we're not.
I
So
think
I'm
it's,
afraid if there's anything or anyone to blame so far, it's got to come our way. I cannot blame anyone else for my problems. I cannot blame anyone else for the stupid things I've done and I will probably continue to do. And that's true of me as an individual. That's probably true of all of us, but it's also true of us as a species. And we have to deal with the effects, and our children, your children, our children, and their children would have to deal probably with effects and stuff that they didn't create,
right. Yeah, I think
or
that's
problems that they didn't create. And that's what scares me the most is us. We are the danger to ourselves still. Maybe when there's AI smarter than us, that will change. But right now, we're still our own worst
I
enemy.
think
Whether
that's
it's personal, in personal terms, or whether it's collective as a species. If we
right.
go extinct tomorrow, it will be because of us. I think
Unless we get
chances
hit by
are.
a
There
giant
may be
meteorite.
other causes. Sure,
Yeah.
but
That's
the
less likely. Yeah.
the probability will be that, you know, it will be us rather
Yeah.
than
I
giant
was I
meteorites,
was
right?
I was trying to be funny. It for sure will be us. I mean the whole idea that, and I think Noam Chomsky brought this up. I mean the I think people forget that nuclear war could happen 5 seconds from now. You know, like it.
Yeah, and think about the world. Like, I don't know about you, but I get scared in a world where 90% of the nuclear weapons will be controlled by Putin and Trump.
Yeah.
I am worried about a world like that.
Oh yeah, that's really fair. I mean,
And they're supposedly buddies, but I don't trust any of those two guys myself too much.
So were Stalin and Hitler.
And
yeah.
Stalin and Hitler were buddies for a while. Too.
Ay, ay, ay.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the
It's
the meteor
the
is a one in a
most
million
Gorbachev
possibility.
act where they divided Poland.
Yeah, yeah, it's all fun and games to divide Poland down the middle. So, yeah, I mean without doubt is really effing horrifying. I wanted to ask you, you were talking about this in a couple of your episodes. You went straight vegan and you feel healthier than ever. What? Because I mean, and I know that's a complete aside, and you don't have to get into that if you don't want to. But you know, I've just been starting to modify my my diet kind of intentionally, and I'm fascinated by that. And you kind of got into the philosophical end of it. If you wouldn't mind, just for our audience, what kind of brought you to that, and how's that going?
So there's 3 or 4 reasons that made me become vegan. Health was the last one, and the one that I thought would be the least likely, because before that I used to be a very heavy meat eater, red meat eater. And my wife comes from an Italian-American family, so we're talking 3 burgers, 3 steaks when I say household before that and stuff. That was maybe 7 months ago when I went vegan.
Right.
So until then I was very heavy meat eater. and I was kind of very strongly leaning towards paleo, even so, less carbs and things like that. So I thought it would be very unhealthy for me. But the reasons that pushed me into veganism were not health, but rather first, you see, each year we kill 70 to 75 billion animals on our planet. So that's bad in at least two ways. The first way is that as India and China get richer and richer and develop taste for meat as we do, and as they want to live the way we do in North America, our capacity as a planet or as a biosphere to produce enough red meat for them to consume as much as we do is diminishing, and we would need something like 3 to 5 planets to fulfill that kind of demand. So that's number one. And of course, 51% of the methane gases and deforestation in the Amazon goes for either growing soy and corn, which goes for animal feed, or for animal cattling, for cattle ranching, and basically it creates deserts where there used to be a jungle afterwards. So
Right.
our planet cannot sustain itself eating on a diet that we eat currently in North America. And right now we've been lucky that only we have been rich enough to eat that way, and maybe in Europe. But as the world hopefully gets richer and richer, then you have Australia, New Zealand, now Asia is picking up steam in the last 10 or 15 years. We cannot sustain this. So it's the right thing to do for the planet. Number one. Number two is it's the right thing to do for the animals themselves. If you care about animals and if you love animals, they do have feelings, and they do suffer, and they suffer tremendously horrible life and tremendously horrible deaths in industrial farming, which is basically the only way to fulfill the demand we have here in North America.
Right.
Right? So that's the second reason. The third reason I also mentioned in the beginning is that if we want to be treated, when we possibly become the second most intelligent species, in a good way by the first intelligent species, we'd better set a good precedent that we are worthy of this kind of treatment by doing the same thing to the less intelligent species that we have today, by doing so ourselves.
Right.
So that's the third. And then the fourth reason, actually, that I was surprised by is actually health. I started doing some research and started actually finally doing my homework, because just like most of us, I was very brainwashed. Well, where are you going to get all your calcium if you don't drink milk? And then, of course, the richest sources of calcium are all plants.
Right.
There are things like kale, spinach, broccoli, all those. The highest nutrient dense foods are all plants, by the way.
Okay.
So I used to be very worried, like everyone. Where are you going to get all the calcium if you don't drink milk? Or where are you going to get all your protein if you don't eat meat and all that stuff?
Right.
I've been not eating milk and meat and any animal byproducts for 7 months now, and I'm perfectly fine. I've actually lost a little bit of weight. I feel great. I'm biking well. Now, it's not all perfect yet, but and I have some issues, because first, the biggest issue, by the way, is the sort of the party pooper effect.
The social bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the social bit, because especially, my wife's family, as I told you, they're kind of Italian-American family. Now, when me and her go to events, like basically the only thing we can eat usually is like white pasta, which
Right.
is kind of like not healthy for you either, by the way. It's basically bleached flour
Right.
and gets stuffed usually with, tomatoes and olive oil or something like that. But it's not too bad, but it's not too healthy either. And so that's the worst thing. I still am struggling with creating habits of cooking whole plant foods, because you can be very unhealthy vegan too. And there's things like vegan junk food. I'm not a fan of soy myself. Soy has negative effects on both your thyroid gland and also your estrogen levels, and it's bad for guys. It's particularly bad for you if you're a woman.
Okay.
But if you stick to not necessarily what's called vegan, but whole plant-based foods like whole grains and all those things, whole, you do a lot of juicing to supplement,
Right.
you can be much healthier, and it's actually been proven. There's all the science in the world. There's like 7,000 studies proving that, by the way. So at the very least, it's a proven fact that if you diminish meat, especially red meat consumption, you diminish things like inflammation and cardiovascular disease risk and all kinds of other factors, cancer risk, etc.
Right.
So I actually was surprised to find out that I am also healthier, and I feel better too, by the way. So it's a win-win-win scenario. The planet's better off, the animals are better off. I feel a better philosopher rather than a hypocrite who says one thing and then does another thing. So I can actually live my message, which every one of us should, by the way. And
Right.
then finally, it's good for my own health, selfishly. So
It's kind of a
I think I recommend it.
yeah, it's kind of a triple quadruple win there. So some of us in our little tribe online have been doing hashtag Baboon Room Challenge. We're trying one thing new for every 30 days. We're talking about trying to build the habits to cook different things. We're basically just working out the habit forming muscle. All sorts of crazy stuff has come out of this. Like, we've got musicians making new things that I'll tag you on one of them. This guy that barely does any music whatsoever made one of the coolest music videos I've ever seen, just because he committed to just writing a riff and putting it online just with Facebook Live, right?
Wow.
It's been really cool for me. Like, I started like just hashtag Baboon Room Challenge, and I played one of the TED Talks where you just try something new every day, and it was basically about this computer programmer at Google that started biking to work every day and started climbing mountains, and basically just because he was working out this habit forming muscle once a day every day. So
Yeah.
mine's boring. Like, I'm doing 3 pull-ups a day for 30 days because I could barely do pull-ups, right? And other people are like making mindfulness guided meditations and cooking without meat and dairy. My wife's brother is doing that exact same thing for 30 days,
That's awesome.
testing your theory out. So this is basically an invitation. If you wanted to make any new habit whatsoever, what would it be, and would you want to come do the challenge with us?
Wow, that's a tough one. Wow. Okay. And surprising and impressive all at once. That's okay, that's a cool curveball. I'm kind of not liking it and liking it at the same time, so it's really good, I would
There
say.
you go.
Well, let me see if I can think
That's
of
the dance
something.
you were talking about right there.
Well, do you have any suggestions, for
Okay, so I'll just list off.
example, what would you want me to try?
Oh, I mean, well, the thing is, the whole point to this exercise is that it can be anything. I mean, I started with 3 pull-ups. I also had like a really kind of intense situation with my dad for many years. We weren't talking, and I went on this meditation retreat and whatever. I called him after sort of coming to some realizations, and so I wanted to interview him in one of the TED Radio hours. Actually talked about a guy interviewing his dad and sort of getting the better parts of that, like just because he's not going to live forever, so I wanted to do that.
Sure.
And I had just started this 30-day challenge with everybody else, and people are doing mindfulness walks, and people are working out for 15 minutes, and they're all posting online every time they do, which I wanted to have a community a part of it, right? So every time you do this one thing, you post online, hey, did it, or you go on Facebook Live and just let everybody know. Like, I go Facebook Live with my pull-ups, but I also let everybody know that my dad is doing 3 gratitudes and 3 things that he wants to accomplish every day.
Okay, I think I got an idea that's gonna hurt me, but so I am a coffee fanatic.
Oh, shit.
So so me and my wife only buy fair trade organic green beans
Okay.
that I home roast at home right before I grind and I brew the coffee, and I only do
Hardcore.
French press. Every once in a while I make an espresso.
Well, there you go. You're not a savage. I mean, come on.
So basically I can try going without coffee for 30 days.
Okay, here's the deal.
And
Here's
if
the
I'm
deal.
grumpy next time we talk to me,
No, here's
then
the
you know
deal.
it's your fault.
There's a way that we do this that's fair.
Okay.
I do a segment called Coffee on the Dock every single morning. in honor of this situation, I'm still gonna call it coffee on the dock. Otherwise, the hashtag will be broken. But I will go for the same 30 days. And honestly, I make sludge for coffee. Like I might die. But at the same time,
And
just
you don't
that
know what you're losing, what you're giving up. Because with me, people who come and have my
I've-
coffee, they don't want to drink anything else ever afterwards.
I see. Well, here's the thing. Now I'm gonna have to come to Toronto, which is a town I don't even like, to come have your coffee. But it's gonna have to be after the next 30 days. So all we're doing. So I guess it'll be at the end of every day, right? Because you will have had no coffee that day. So let's pick a time, because being specific is really awesome. And both of us will post hashtag Baboon Room Challenge. Didn't have any coffee today. How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
That's fine. And we do that where, on Twitter or Facebook?
We could do Facebook and Twitter.
Okay. So hashtag no coffee.
Well, no, this is gonna be hashtag Baboon Room Challenge, because everybody, you can actually, if you search that, if you search that on Facebook, you can see everybody.
Yeah. Okay, get it.
Who's doing it.
Okay. All right.
Son of a
So we start
bitch.
tomorrow.
Yep, because I definitely had a lot of coffee today.
I'm gonna be cranky, man.
Oh no.
I'm gonna be very cranky. Okay, but that's good anyway. That's good. Change is good. Challenge is good.
I agree.
Your comfort is good. That's how you make progress. Okay.
That's definitely been my last couple weeks in a nutshell. That's for dang
and
sure.
I do not only the best quality, but I do industrial quantities. Like I do a cup like this in the morning, and sometimes a cup like that in the afternoon. So
I've had 2 of these, both French press, both Starbucks, both way too much coffee.
That we call Charbucks, by the way.
Sorry. I honestly, right after I said the word Starbucks, I'm like, this guy is like a total aficionado, and right. I just totally
Don't even get me going, because it's another 2 hours.
Okay.
Just to get you to that point, to understand. Like, don't even get me going. Yeah, that's enough.
All right. So I realize the gravity of this sacrifice, which is why I'm going to do it with you, because that's a big deal. Okay, so we've gone so much more than I thought we could have, and I'm really grateful. I get just, it's funny. Like we talk about, people being really excited about sharing their genuine selves, and I mean I've been going down the rabbit hole on that the last little while, Nick. It's been a real awakening, frankly, and trying to do this little thing with the challenge was from, I mean, I just set a stupid goal to get a certain number of views, right? And so I started sharing with people my goals and my gratitude from, have you heard of the 5-Minute Journal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do that, but I wasn't doing it. So I just decided, listen, not only am I going to do it every day, but I'm going to put it online, because it's going to get me like, a few views or whatever, and get me a little bit more towards my goal. But it's created like a tribe of people that are doing awesome stuff and setting goals and just doing everything I was supposed to be doing, and now they're doing, and it's become like a thing. And then I just let's do this challenge from this TED Talk, no big deal. But it's like exploding everywhere. People that I barely know in town are like, hey, I saw you live on Facebook and I'm doing that Baboon Room Challenge thing. I'm like, what the frick? So the fact that you're doing it is awesome sauce. I'm excited about that for sure. And it just like being able to do podcasting like this and meeting you has been and I apologize. No, I don't really care. It's fucking awesome. I was gonna apologize for swearing, but I swear sometimes. That's welcome to the internet. It's just a big deal. It feels important. Like moving forward.
Let me just stop you for a second and say, though, that goes both ways, though. You have to understand, right? So don't underplay your own importance into this process. As I said, it's a dance. It takes 2 to tango. So it goes and it comes both ways, right? So, and the energy is there. So it's good. It's great.
All right. Well, awesome. I can't lie. I've been thinking about the dance the entire time. It's really cool that you say it that way. I don't have to. So one last question. It's a big one, and I'm just going to put it out there. I don't want the easy answer, because I know the easy answer exists. I know you're doing a fundraising campaign. Our little tribe is going to be spending some energy on that, because we obviously want to help you out. Because I mean, I am telling everyone that you're doing good work. Now that they've seen this, I think everyone is going to know that you're doing good work. What are you most excited about the future? And not only that, but how can not only your podcast, but how can my podcast and my audience help you the most with that? Assuming that we're already on board with the campaign, like we're already doing that. How else can we help?
You can forget about the campaign. You can help the most by doing what you do and by being the best version of yourself, period. Right? And by challenging yourself as you have, by doing what you do, whether it's the Baboon Room challenge, whether it's your 5-minute journal online, whether it's setting up goals, whether it's calling your dad after whatever was the obstacle you had to overcome to do that. So being the best version of your own self is the best reward I can ever ask for. As I said, if I've done my job right, I would be a midwife. So if you tell me that I've been a midwife, then that makes me happy. And if you can give birth to all the amazing things that you guys are able to do, then screw the campaign. It doesn't, you can't measure everything in money. And even if you could, it's just paper in the end. That's going back to Douglas Adams. If you open up the book, in the beginning it says most people don't realize that all the source of their trouble and problems come from little small green bits of paper.
Right. Yep.
So screw the campaign. Just be the best version of yourself, and that's it. And if you do that, that's infectious. And as I said, living by example, by living your message, and then once you do it, then other people see it, then get infected. It's like an outbreak. It's like a virus.
We're watching it happen. We're watching it happen.
And that's how you make change. That's how you make change. And you were saying already that it's happening, but and you were even surprised by how it's spreading. So keep doing that. That's the best thing you can do, and anyone, I think.
All right.
And it makes me super happy.
Good. I mean, that's fucking awesome. There, I just swore again. Welcome to the internet. So, without being coy, if you ever want to come on the podcast again, that'd be cool. I mean, I think, I mean, there's a million episodes that we could go over and review. I think, I mean, moving forward,
2 hours and a half almost today, so let's give your audience some.
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, here's what my audience, knowing my audience the way that I do, they're gonna be like, so you guys are doing that tomorrow, right? Like, no, settle down. He has important people to talk to. Let him do that, and then I'll ask him about him. No, I'd love to have you back. Is there anyone that you can think of that that I should ask that absolutely needs to be on the Baboon Room and do like a long form, open ended conversation where I throw the challenge at them, and again, we center on trying to be your best selves and be the example.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's many people that come to mind, but since you're already a big Tim Ferriss fan, and the birth. So the midwife hopefully would do such a great job that the offspring would do better than the midwife. I haven't had the chance to interview Tim Ferriss yet.
Right.
Last time I tried was maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, and he wasn't interested. Why don't you just interview Tim? And he's also the kind of character that you can have a blast with in the Baboon Room. Much more.
Right.
He's a much more interesting baboon than I am anyway.
I don't know about that.
Why don't you do that?
All right, so I have to message Tim Ferriss and be like, hey, I got one podcast here on mine, so I guess you're next on the list, dude. What's up?
Sure. So,
right? Worst he can do is like, yeah, whatever. This email's ridiculous.
And you don't have to do it tomorrow necessarily, but you can sure try to do it tomorrow, and then keep trying until it happens.
Yeah, I completely and totally agree. I mean that is a
Why
conversation
not?
that
I mean,
right, exactly.
Instead of asking why, I think quite often we should ask why not.
I completely and totally agree. All right, game on. Tim Ferriss, you're next.
Awesome.
Again, thank you so much for being on the Baboon Room. This has been my favorite podcast so far, and I've talked to God many, many times. So,
And you've had only one episode.
yeah. Exactly. There you go. I mean, I basically,
I
That's
think
pretty
my
good.
work speaks for itself.
yeah.
So
God does he does good radio voice work. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Any final words?
I think we've already said everything, so I'm just gonna say this is the first step for you on your journey. Just don't stop, man. Keep at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it
Keep
was
going. Even the longest path starts with a single step.
Lao Tzu was always right.
I think you should ask Nicola to give you an ident. Hi, this is Nicola, and you're listening to the Baboon Room. I think you should ask him to do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Would that be all right?
Sure, that's actually a very good idea. That, I'm telling you, God really knows his shit, because I never came up with such a good idea to ask for 200 people that I've interviewed on my show, and
Right.
imagine how useful that would have been.
Yeah, I mean, Aubrey de Grey saying in his ridiculously awesome Rasputin voice, "Hey, you're listening to the Singular," and I can't do his accent to save my own life, nor any others for that matter. But yeah, that'd be cool. So yeah, hey, this is Socrates with the Singularity One-on-One. You're listening to the Baboon Room. Hold on, we gotta get ready for this.
Hey guys, this is Socrates from the Singularity One-on-One, and you're watching the Baboon Room.
That was pretty awesome.
That just happened. Here's the
That
problem.
was-
Here's
that
the.
was a
Yeah, that was good.
horrible monkey voice, but that's okay.
That's-
It has to be funny and memorable. It doesn't
Oh
have
my
to
god.
be perfect.
The problem now is that I'm never gonna use another ident. Period. That's the benchmark right there. Watch, I'm gonna have Tim Ferriss do it, and he's gonna try and do that. I'm like, no, Nicola's better. I'm just
And
saying, I'm gonna keep that
that's
one.
a brilliant idea.
All right. Well, I look forward to hearing Elon Musk letting us know that we're listening to the Singularity One-on-One podcast.
All right.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
So tomorrow I will tag you in a hashtag after not having any coffee all day long on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, and if I can, I'll try. I have a doctor's appointment and a couple of other. I'm doing also another Google Hangout in the morning. But at night, when you do the Facebook Live thing, I'll try and hook on too, and I'll share it that it's live and all that stuff too. So
Okay.
send me a message if you want, like a personal message, and I'm gonna share on all my social media. Hey guys, this event is live now,
Okay.
so that they can go watch it now, and maybe I'll hook on too.
Okay. That'll be awesome. I'll probably do that. Let's say around what is tomorrow? Thursday?
Thursday. Yeah.
Okay.
Thursday.
I'll do it like 9:00 Eastern, but I'll send you a message beforehand. All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nicola.
9 o'clock Eastern. You said 8.
Yeah, you said 8 in the promo.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were doing that whole big thing. Oh, I'm an idiot. Hi.
Gotta be careful with the timing, because
No,
people
I
are
honestly-
going to be ready for 8.
Yeah. No, I forgot that I was
You even
doing
told
that.
them 7:50 in your instructions.
Yeah. 7:50. No, I legit forgot that I set that up.
It
That's why.
happens.
That's why I've got here. So yeah, I'll be posting about it all day because I mean, yeah, people are gonna want to watch this because it's awesome sauce. He said without a hint of arrogance or hubris. Anyway, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and energy and awesomenicity, which is a word I just now made up.
My pleasure. And yeah, let's hope you got. I don't know if you guys edit it all or not, but see what you can do with it. If you're raw like me, or if you want to touch a few places and just. It's entirely your thing, so it's entirely up to you. Just I'll try to connect on Facebook Live tomorrow, and I'll share it. That's all I. Like,
Okay, no, that's awesome. Honestly,
yours.
yeah, I want to make sure that like what we were actually just gonna play the audio, but I think we'll play the video if we can make it work, which I'm sure we can. Yeah, we usually don't edit anything, and by we I mean me. God edits continuously. I said that out loud. That's continuously.
All right, I gotta run now.
All right, hey, no problem. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
All the best.
Ciao.
Cheers. Bye.